Imagine being betrayed by the people you trust the most, thrown into a horde of ravenous zombies with no hope of survival. Brutal, right? Well, that's exactly what happened to our protagonist. His girlfriend and her slimy new boyfriend fed him to the undead. Literally. His life ended in the most gruesome way possible, or so it seemed. But fate isn't done with him just yet. Instead of staying dead, he's sent back in time to the moment right before the zombie apocalypse begins. Now, with a mysterious blind system that grants him powers for completing dangerous tasks, he's got a chance to rewrite his story. The question is, can he outsmart not only the zombies, but also the people who betrayed him? Or will he fall into the same traps all over again? The story kicks off in the creepiest spot you could imagine, an abandoned construction site, dead of night. A boy is surrounded by a bunch of psychopaths armed to the teeth, with weapons that scream bad news. Oh, and just for fun, he's hanging over a cage packed with zombies, all of them practically salivating for their next meal. Him, and who is this poor kid dangling between life and a very hungry death? Meet Jiang. Now, one of the psychos, a woman with a face full of glee, asks Jiang if life feels meaningless now that all his friends are dead. Real nice, right? Cold sweat is pouring down his face as he flashes back to the good old days with his friends. This is all my fault, Jiang thinks, drowning in regret like it's some twisted therapy session. But then rage kicks in. He yells at the woman and calls her every name in the book, swearing she deserves the worst death imaginable. Because, you know, who wouldn't? She just murdered his friends, and now she's about to feed him to zombies for dessert. The woman, oh, she's loving it, clinging to some big muscular dude like a twisted couple on vacation. Oh no, Jiang's mad at me again, she says, almost purring, like this is all some flirty game. The man, cool as a cucumber, suggests they should torture him slowly, like that's the best way to spice up date night. He then casually thanks Jiang for all the supplies he and his friends had gathered, because hey, those supplies mean they can live the high life for a few more months. Comfortably, of course. But, plot twist. The big guy presses a button and guess what? Jiang takes a nosedive, slamming hard into that zombie cage below. Full force, zero mercy. And now the zombies are like kids in a candy store. They're starving, and Jiang, well, he's the main course. They charge at him, ripping into him like they've never eaten before. Blood's everywhere, and Jiang, coughing it up between gasps of pain, starts thinking. Because, yeah, what better time to reflect on life than when you're being eaten alive? If I had another chance, I'd do it all differently. I'd make them pay for what they did. Never again would I let this happen, he swears to himself, all while getting torn apart by the zombies. Jiang Xiaoyong jolts awake, heart pounding, mind racing. Wait a second, didn't I just die? Like brutally? He blinks, trying to shake off the sensation of being eaten alive by zombies. But before he can fully process his not-so-dead state, the screech of a familiar voice snaps him back to reality. It's her, Hui Jing. The same evil woman who betrayed him in his last life is currently mid-rant about him not putting her name on the house deed, as if that's the most pressing issue. Jiang just stares at her, dumbfounded. He thought he was Zombie Chow a minute ago, and now he's back here in this nightmare. He scans the room, trying to piece together the insanity. Wait, have I been reborn? Then it clicks. This is before the apocalypse. I've got a second shot at life, a chance to avoid getting backstabbed, both figuratively and literally, by her. He remembers vividly how this woman stole his parents' inheritance, leaving him to freeze on the streets while she lived it up. And just when the world went to hell in a handbasket, with zombies running rampant, she waltzed back into his life pretending to be desperate. She begged for shelter, only to sell him and his friends out to their enemies. What a pitch, right? Back to the present, Kui Jing is still screaming about money. 400,000 yuan to be exact. Jiang stares at her, deadpan. Yeah, sure, like that's my priority right now. But he keeps his cool, thinking, I can't lose it yet. Play it smart, wait for the right moment. Kui Jing, sensing no immediate groveling, gets even angrier. Did you hear me? She yells, her voice reaching new levels of shrillness. But instead of cowering, Jiang does the unthinkable. Fine, I got it, he says, cutting her off and, get this, physically pushing her toward the door. The shock on her face is priceless. She's clearly thinking, when did this spineless pushover grow a backbone? Jiang shuts the door on her stunned expression and turns around, heart still racing, but for entirely different reasons now. He glances at the clock. 1 month. He's got 1 month before the apocalypse hits again. If he doesn't prepare, history's going to repeat itself, and no way in hell am I letting that happen. Just then, a neon green notification flashes in his vision. The apocalypse system is now active. Oh well, isn't that just fantastic? Jiang thinks, sarcasm dripping from his internal monologue. The system throws up a mission. Own a piece of land to get 10 points. Points, what, like a video game? Jiang wonders. A system store pops up in front of him, showing a variety of items, tools, and upgrades available for purchase. Okay, this might be useful. In his last life, every penny he had went toward Kui Jing's bride price, leaving him malnourished and pretty much broke. Now, he's got a new game to play. His phone buzzes with message. Are you full? Jiang smirks. Zombies will be everywhere soon. Might as well enjoy some good food while I still can. After all, if he's going to survive this time, he's doing it on his own terms, and with a full stomach. Jiang Xiaoyong found himself in an upscale building, the kind where everything screams money, from the marble floors to the crystal chandeliers. His eyes locked on the spread of food in front of him. Is this what they call Michelin's 3-star takeaway? He wondered aloud, poking at the $300 braised pork like it was an alien artifact. His expression shifted from skeptical to ecstatic as soon as he took a bite, his face lighting up as if he'd just discovered the meaning of life. Unbelievable, this food is divine, he exclaimed, stuffing his face like a starving pig, practically rolling his eyes in joy. But before he could properly wallow in the ecstasy of overpriced gourmet food, his phone buzzed. A call. The name on the screen soured his mood instantly. It was the evil woman's friend. Jiang sighed. Of course, must be Kui Jing crying to her lapdogs again. Reluctantly, he answered, only to be greeted by her friend's screeching voice, accusing him of not showing enough love to Kui Jing. Love? He almost choked on his pork. The friend prattled on about how Jiang had failed a love test and could prove his devotion by giving Kui Jing, get this, 1 million yuan. By the end of the day, because apparently love is measured in cold, hard cash. Jiang's blood boiled, his face darkening as he gripped the phone. Who do you think you are, testing me like that? He spat back, ending the call mid-screech before she could respond. He collapsed back onto the couch, smirking to himself. Let them test me all they want. Soon, I'll be the one setting the rules. His thoughts drifted back to more pressing matters, like the apocalypse looming a month away. I need land, he mused. Not just any land, but something perfect. Close to water, mountains, and easily defensible. A fortress, really. Something Kui Jing and her band of vultures wouldn't be able to touch. The scene shifted to a bustling real estate office, where Jiang entered with his newfound confidence. A woman greeted him politely, asking what he was looking for, but before Jiang could respond, an obnoxious man, clearly the real estate manager, cut her off. He barked orders at her to move boxes of toilet paper. Ah, toilet paper, the true currency of the apocalypse, Jiang mused sarcastically. The manager, now eyeing Jiang's cheap clothes, sneered. A broke loser like you can't even afford a toilet, let alone a house. Jiang's face turned dark. Are you just evil, or do you really enjoy looking down on people? He asked, his voice dripping with barely contained fury. The manager, clearly not reading the room, snorted. If you can afford a toilet, I'll live stream myself eating a huiyang. Jiang grinned wickedly, leaning in. I'll make sure it's fresh for you later. Turning to the woman, Jiang calmly said, I'm not here to buy a house. I'm here to buy land. The room froze. The real estate manager and the woman blinked at him in disbelief. But when Jiang pulled out a black card, cold sweat dripped down their faces. Every customer in the building turned to stare. Did this guy just casually pull out a card like he's buying groceries? Whispers filled the air, questioning how Jiang, of all people, could afford land, let alone expensive land. Trying to regain control of the situation, the real estate manager laughed, mocking him again. But Jiang wasn't fazed. You'll find out soon enough, he said, eyes gleaming. The lady worker, now visibly nervous, led Jiang to a seating area and presented a portfolio of available land. But before she could get into her sales pitch, Jiang waved her off. No need for that. I need land near mountains and water, good for transportation with existing large buildings. She hesitated, but before she could respond, the real estate manager cut in, mocking him again. There's land like that in the East District, but it's an unfinished factory project, and only a fool would buy it. Jiang's interest was piqued. Unfinished factory sounds perfect. The lady worker, still shocked, confirmed it. The factory had been abandoned after the team leader ran off, leaving the project incomplete. But to Jiang, it was a gold mine. It's defensible, has existing structures, and barbed wire is an easy fix, he thought. I'll take it, he declared without a second thought. Both the real estate manager and the lady worker stared at him as if he'd grown two heads. Are you serious? That land is a mess, the lady stammered. Jiang grinned, glancing at the real estate manager. Oh, I'm serious. Someone's going to be eating fresh poop soon, so we might as well speed this up. A short while later, Jiang handed over a $300,000 down payment, leaving the real estate manager in a state of shock. This can't be real, the manager muttered, staring at the receipt as if it would dissolve in his hands. The reality sank in. Jiang had bought the land, and now the manager had to live up to his promise. Customers gathered, some pulling out their phones to live stream the impending humiliation. One even added, My stomach's not feeling great, but don't worry, it'll be fresh for you. Jiang walked away, shaking his head, leaving the chaos behind. I spent all my bride's money on that land. Now to figure out how to stockpile supplies, he thought. As he pondered his next steps, a fat man passed him, doing a double take. Was that really Jiang? The man continued to the real estate office only to witness the real estate manager on the verge of being force-fed poop. The fat man, now angry and confused, yelled, What the hell is happening in my absence? The scene shifts to the evil woman, Hui Jing, sitting in her lavishly decorated apartment, meticulously applying a fresh coat of nail polish. She admired her work, her reflection in the mirror showing nothing but pure satisfaction, until her phone buzzed. It was a call from her accomplice, the fat man. With a sly smile, she answered the call, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Hey, darling, do you remember me? But the fat man wasn't in the mood for pleasantries. He cut her off immediately. Do you know that idiot Jiang went to the real estate company and bought a piece of land? An expensive piece of land. Hui Jing's smile faltered. What? That broke loser. How the hell could he afford something like that? She snapped, her freshly manicured nails digging into her palm. The fat man explained in a hushed tone as if it were some grand conspiracy. It was a $300,000 down payment. I'm pretty sure he used the bride's money. At this, Hui Jing's eyes flared with fury. My money? That spineless fool spent my money on land? she seethed, her voice rising with every word. The fat man tried to calm her down, advising her to figure out what Jiang was up to. But she wasn't having it. "I'm going to expose that idiot online. Everyone will know he's been using my money behind my back," she hissed, hanging up before the fat man could say anything more. Meanwhile, back at Jiang's place, he sat at his cluttered desk, his mind racing. Buying supplies and building a fortress all take money. Where the hell am I supposed to get that kind of cash when I'm broke? He thought, rubbing his temples. Suddenly, a loud bang on the door shook him from his thoughts. Startled, he stood up, only to find Kui Jing and her meddling friend standing outside, both looking like they were ready for a showdown. Jiang barely had time to react before Kui Jing barged in, her face twisted in fury. "You spent my money behind my back," she shouted, not bothering with greetings. "That land you bought, it's mine. You used my bride's money, so it belongs to me now." Jiang blinked, completely dumbfounded. "What are you talking about?" he asked, genuinely confused. But Kui Jing wasn't letting him off the hook. "I know everything," she spat. "You spent my money on that land and now it's mine." "I'm taking it from you." Jiang's confusion turned to anger. "Have you lost your mind?" he retorted. His temper flaring, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a stack of cash, slapping it right in her face. "Plenty of money right here, sweetheart." Kui Jing stood frozen, her face a mix of disbelief and shock as the cash fell to the ground. Jiang's voice was cold as ice. "I don't owe you anything. In fact, I know all about your little affair with the fat man. So don't even try it." Kui Jing's face went pale, and her anger quickly replaced with panic. She started sweating bullets, wondering how the hell Jiang found out. Her friend, sensing the awkward tension, jumped in, trying to smooth things over. "Oh, come on, Jiang. This is just a misunderstanding between you two. No need to get worked up." Jiang cut her off with a deadpan look. "No misunderstanding. She's a cheater, not my girlfriend. So why don't both of you get lost? Go back to the fat man." With that, Jiang slammed the door in their faces, leaving Kui Jing and her friend standing outside in utter shock. As they began walking away, Kui Jing's mind raced. How could he know about the affair? We were always discreet. We only booked a room a few times. But her panic was interrupted by her friend. "Did he tell the truth?" the friend asked, narrowing her eyes. "About you and the fat man? And why didn't you mention this to me before we confronted him?" Kui Jing stumbled over her words. "We only booked a room a couple of times. It's not like..." The friend's concerned expression hardened. "You've really messed this up, haven't you? We need a plan if we're going to handle Jiang." But as she said this, a flicker of greed flashed in her eyes. Inwardly, the friend thought, "Now's my chance. Jiang's a fool, but with Kui Jing out of the way, I could claim him for myself. After all, we're supposed to be good sisters, but no one said I had to hold back." The scene shifts to the construction site where Jing stood, surveying the land he had just bought. A plot surrounded by half-built factories and scattered debris. Next to him, a middle-aged contractor scratched his head, clearly perplexed by Jiang's request. "How long will the renovations take?" Jiang asked, impatience laced in his voice. The contractor, still baffled, glanced at the site. "What kind of enemy did you piss off to need this much protection?" he muttered, more to himself than to Jiang. Jiang waved a dismissive hand. "You don't need to know the details. Asking too many questions won't help." He raised an eyebrow. "So how much to finish everything in a month?" The contractor almost choked on his own disbelief. "A month? That's impossible." "If you can't do it, I'll find someone who can," Jiang cut in, his tone sharper than the unfinished steel beams around them. Reluctantly, the contractor sighed. "It's not just about the timeline. You're looking at a massive cost here." Jiang crossed his arms, clearly irritated. How much are we talking? Expedited labor, increased work intensity. It's going to cost you at least $20 million. Jiang blinked, surprised but unfazed. Is $20 million enough? He asked, as if he were discussing pocket change. The contractor nodded. Yes, but you'll need to pay a $5 million deposit to even get started. Jiang smirked. I'll transfer the money within a week, and don't worry if I don't pay. The land will still be mine. No need for you to stress about it. His tone was dripping with sarcasm, the kind that says, I own you now. The contractor, a bead of sweat forming on his brow, quickly agreed, realizing Jiang wasn't one to play games. Just as Jiang was about to move on, a voice, sickly sweet and dripping with fake innocence, called out to him. He turned around, confused and irritated, only to see her. The evil woman's friend, the one who had been part of swindling him out of his family's property in his past life, was now clinging to his arm like a parasite. "Oh, what are you doing here?" she asked, batting her eyes while squeezing her melons against his arm in a pitiful attempt to act all coy and innocent. Jiang's face twisted in anger, memories of his past life flooding back. She had been the one who had whispered poison into the crazy woman's ear, persuading her to scam him. He had sworn to repay her twice the misery she had inflicted on him, and today was just the beginning. She continued to chatter, completely oblivious to his rage. "Oh, is this the land you bought? What a nice place. Are you going to build something here?" She giggled as if she hadn't helped ruin his life once already. Jiang shoved her away, his voice cold and flat. "Whatever I'm building has nothing to do with you." Her eyes widened in shock. She didn't expect this. In the past, Jiang was a pathetic pushover, always blushing like a schoolboy around her. But now, he was pushing her away, like she was nothing. She was so used to his stammering admiration that she couldn't fathom why he was acting so different. She tried to recover, running her fingers over his hand, but Jiang had already turned his attention back to the construction workers. He was done with her. "Make sure the gates are expanded," he said to the workers, his voice commanding, ignoring her completely. She called out to him again, desperation creeping into her voice. But Jiang just kept walking, treating her like a piece of trash left behind in the rubble of his old life. She stood there stunned, unsure of what had just happened. She clenched her fists, fury and frustration bubbling up inside her. How could this be happening? She had always assumed she had Jiang wrapped around her finger, but now it was as if she didn't even exist. She wasn't ready to let go of him, not when there was a chance to take him and his land for herself. That crazy woman Kui Jing messed up, she thought bitterly, but I won't. Her eyes narrowed as she watched Jiang walk away. There's still time to make this work in my favor. She bit her lip, determination setting in. If she couldn't have him through manipulation, then maybe she needed a different approach. After all, desperation had a way of bringing out creativity. Jiang slumped onto his couch, the weight of the documents from his newly bought land sprawled across the coffee table. His expression was grim. "I pledged the house to the bank," he muttered to himself, staring at the paperwork. $3 million. That's barely enough to get the first phase of construction started. I'm still as broke as ever. He rubbed his temples, deep in thought. The apocalypse was coming soon. Who cared if he sold the house multiple times? It wasn't like the world would be around to judge him for it. With a resigned shrug, he made up his mind. Screw it. I'll sell the house again. What's the worst that could happen? It's not like the bank's gonna survive the end of the world. Suddenly, his thoughts were interrupted by loud, obnoxious banging at the door. "Jiang, open up, you rascal!" An old voice yelled from the hallway. Jiang sighed, recognizing that gravelly tone anywhere. It was his downstairs neighbor, Grandpa Li. The man was a nightmare wrapped in wrinkled skin, always finding new ways to annoy Jiang. Li owned the first 2 floors of the building, and had been pestering Jiang to sell his third-floor apartment for years, but Jiang had always resisted. It was supposed to be his matrimonial home. "Great," Jiang muttered as he walked toward the door. "What is it this time? A funeral wreath on my door? Or did he just jam the lock again?" He opened the door, and there stood Grandpa Lee, his monkey-like face twisted in a scowl. "You were out clubbing last night, weren't you?" Lee barked, his voice filled with accusation. Jiang rolled his eyes. "Clubbing? I was in bed by 10, Grandpa. I'm not wasting my energy on whatever fantasies you've cooked up this time." Lee jabbed a bony finger in Jiang's face. "I heard something. Don't you lie to me, boy." Jiang let out an exasperated sigh. "You always hear something. I'm pretty sure you've got more wires loose in your head than this building does. So, are you done? Or do you have another old man conspiracy to share?" Lee wasn't deterred. He folded his arms. "I don't care what you say. I know what I heard, but you know what? Fine. Let's cut the crap. Sell me the damn apartment, Tuita." Jiang smirked. Finally, he thought. "You really want it that bad, huh?" He looked down at the scrawny old man with a smug expression. "Fine, I'll sell it to you. But there's one condition." Lee's eyes gleamed with interest. "What's the condition?" he asked eagerly. "You'll pay me $5 million up front. All of it, no funny business. And since my new place won't be ready for 6 months, I'm staying here until then." Lee's wrinkled face froze, his jaw hanging open in disbelief. $5 million? Are you serious? Jiang slowly began closing the door. "If you don't like the deal, forget it." Wait. Lee pushed his head through the crack in the door, his face now a mix of desperation and greed. "Fine, but we need to sign a contract. I don't want any regrets later." Jiang looked at him like he was staring at a particularly ugly cockroach. "A contract? Yeah, no problem. We'll get it in writing." With that, Jiang slammed the door in the old man's face and cursed him under his breath. "Enjoy your fancy contract, you old fool. In a month's time, you'll be 6 feet under, and I'll be counting your money." Jiang flopped back down onto his couch, pulling out his phone to calculate his winnings. $5 million from the old man, plus the $3 million from the bank loan. $8 million total. His phone beeped and the system screen popped up, congratulating him on completing his first task, owning a piece of land. With a satisfied grin, he claimed the system's reward. The next morning, Jiang strutted into the city, ready to tackle his next task, stocking up for the apocalypse. The system told him to get a year's worth of supplies, and he wasn't about to half-ass it. As he breezed through the shopping mall, people gawked at him like he was the town lunatic, filling cart after cart with anything remotely useful. "Who needs this much toilet paper?" someone whispered, followed by snickers. Another person muttered, "Poor fool probably believes in those doomsday rumors. What an idiot." Jiang couldn't care less. He knew what was coming. Let them laugh. They'd be dead soon enough while he lounged in his fortified bunker with a year's supply of ramen. When he finally checked off everything on his list, the system chimed in to congratulate him, giving him a modest 10 points as a reward. Sweet, Jiang thought. But when he opened the system store, his grin faltered. Enhancing attributes? Useful for surviving the apocalypse, but way too expensive for his current broke self. His eyes landed on the protagonist's supply box. It had a shiny icon and the promise of expanding his advantage. Sold. He bought it without hesitation. Out popped a box plastered with an infinity symbol and mysterious question marks dancing all around it. Great, a Pandora's box, he muttered, half expecting it to explode. But when it unlocked, the system informed him he had received a level 1 space ring. 500 cubic meters of space, and time is static inside? Jiang's face lit up like a kid on Christmas. The first thing he thought of was hoarding fresh food. With that kind of storage, he didn't have to worry about things going bad, and he wasn't exactly a master chef. More like a hopeless kitchen disaster. Before Jiang could bask in his small victory, the system rudely dropped the next task on him: collect supplies for 10 years. Seriously, Jiang groaned. At least the reward was 20 points this time. Just as he was about to get moving again, a familiar voice cut through his thoughts. "Who's causing trouble in my store?" Jiang turned to see the store manager storming over with a few security guards in tow. He nearly laughed out loud when he recognized the guy. Yong Tao, the same lackey who'd been a pathetic bully in middle school, always acting tough because of his boss, Shang. Yong approached Jiang with that same weaselly expression, barking orders like he was someone important. "Return all those items or else," he demanded, clearly thinking he had the upper hand. Jiang didn't even bother to hide his smirk. "Yong, seriously? Still picking on the weak, huh? Guess some things never change." He raised an eyebrow. "Let me ask you something. How you treat all your customers?" Yong blinked, caught off guard by Jiang's calm defiance. "You think I'm stupid enough to believe you're actually buying all this crap? Pay for it now, or I'll throw you out myself." Jiang shrugged. "Fine, ring it up." An hour later, every single item had been scanned, and Yong stood there looking smug. The total was a monstrous number, and Yong smugly handed the payment terminal to Jiang. "Let's see if your card doesn't bounce, loser." With a dramatic flourish, Jiang swiped his card. Approved. The color drained from Yong's face. As he sulked away with his guards, Jiang called after him, a wicked grin on his face. "Hey, come back here. You forgot something." Yong turned, clearly annoyed. "What now?" Jiang crossed his arms. "You owe me an apology." Yong's jaw dropped. "What?" "I'm a paying customer, aren't I? Apologize for your rudeness or I'll return everything right now." Jiang's voice was calm, but the other customers were already muttering, some even pulling out their phones to record the spectacle. One guy shouted, "Just apologize, man. You messed up. Don't make it worse." With his reputation on the line, Yong had no choice. His face twisted with anger and humiliation as he mumbled, "I'm sorry." Jiang, clearly enjoying every second of it, patted Yong's head patronizingly. "Good boy. Maybe next time don't be such a jerk." Yong was seething, but Jiang wasn't done. "Hey, if you can swallow your pride a little more, I'll buy 10 times what I just bought." Yong's eyes widened. "You're bluffing." Jiang held out his card again, the confidence in his eyes unshakable. "Want to bet? Check my balance." Yong hesitated, but curiosity got the better of him. He swiped the card and nearly fainted when he saw the number. Over 7 million. The manager's knees buckled. He couldn't believe the same guy he used to bully had more money than he'd ever seen in his entire miserable life. Jiang just smiled and said, "Now, about those wholesalers. You know any?" Yong, thoroughly humiliated, nodded quickly. "Yeah, there's this guy named Shin." Jiang's smile faded. "Shen? You mean that Shen? The same Shen who had extorted him back in school, treating him like dirt?" "Perfect," Jiang muttered sarcastically. "Looks like I'm surrounded by idiots." As the warehouse scene opens, a badass car screeched into the lot, nearly turning Yang Gong into a pancake. Jiang watched in disbelief, jaw clenched in anger. "Seriously? Who the hell drives like that?" he muttered under his breath, already irritated by the arrogance radiating off the vehicle. The driver, Shang, of course, stepped out like he was auditioning for the role of ultimate jerk, cigarette dangling from his lips, puffing smoke clouds like he thought they added to his charm. Yang, ever the loyal servant to Shang, scurried over, trying to sound important. "Remember him, Shang? From high school?" Shang, who clearly hadn't evolved beyond his nicotine addiction, let the smoke clog up his brain. He blinked, made Yang repeat himself, and finally, with a slow exhale of smoke directly into Jiang's face, said, "Oh yeah, you're that guy. with a bit of backbone, pretending to be something you're not. Huh? Jiang glared at him, already calculating just how many times he could deck this idiot before it became illegal. Shang tugged at Jiang's hoodie, inspecting it like he was some fashion expert. Fake designer, right? Hate people like you. Pretend to be rich but can't even dress properly. Jiang deadpanned. I don't even know if it's designer, man. I bought it from some random store. But thanks for your concern, fashion police. Without warning, Shang whipped around, grabbing Yang by the head, shaking him like a rag doll. You brought this idiot here, wasting my damn time. He followed it up with a swift kick to Yang's rear, who whimpered but didn't dare fight back. Told you he's a big client, boss. Yang tried to explain, but Shang wasn't having it. I can tell who's rich. I've been in this business for years. Jiang stifled a laugh. Yeah, years of secondhand smoke have probably clogged up your brain too. But even sarcasm wasn't working on the buffoon in front of him. Shang puffed up his chest, thinking he was about to intimidate Jiang, grabbed him by the collar and snarled. What did you just say? Without missing a beat, Jiang repeated. I said you're illiterate and you look down on people. For a moment, Shang looked ready to throw a punch, but it was obvious the word illiterate stung more than anything else. Yang, ever the eager lapdog, whispered urgently, Boss, that's your weak spot. Remember, you are illiterate. You hate that, right? Shang kicked Yang aside like a trash can he was done with. Shut up, Yang. You talk too much. He then turned back to Jiang. You're not leaving here unless you buy a truckload of goods. Jiang, cool as ice, pulled out his phone and held it up like a weapon. Stop tugging at my collar and show me the account. I'm wiring the money now. In seconds, $1 million was transferred to Shang's account. He nearly choked on his cigarette when he saw the balance. What? You... Jiang let the shock sink in before delivering the final blow. I'm buying $5 million worth of goods, so load up the truck. I'll pay the rest when you deliver. Shang, still trying to recover from the financial whiplash, stammered, What kind of goods? Everything. Rice, salt, you name it. If it's edible, I want it. Jiang replied casually as if he were ordering takeout instead of stocking up for the apocalypse. Shang's sleazy grin returned as he led Jiang into the warehouse. He had a plan. Sell Jiang the nearly expired junk, make a quick buck, and laugh all the way to the bank. I'll give you a 10% discount if you take the whole batch, Shang offered, practically licking his lips in greed. Jiang, not missing a beat, picked up one of the brown bags from a crate and inspected it closely. These are all nearly expired. He glared at Shang, who blinked in surprise. Except for the top layer, of course. How shrewd of you. Caught, Shang quickly changed tactics. All right. 50% discount. Take it all. But Jiang wasn't playing his game. Nah, I'll take the best quality goods for $5 million, but I do have plans for the expired ones. He said it so casually, like buying nearly rotten supplies was all part of his master plan. Shang, confused and a little freaked out, stammered, Plans? What kind of plans? Jiang grinned darkly. You wouldn't get it, Shang. Just load up the good stuff. I'll send you the address later. He patted Shang on the shoulder, causing a cold sweat to break out on the man's forehead. Shang looked like he was already regretting all his life choices. Just then, Jiang's phone rang. He casually answered, ignoring Shang's terrified expression. Yeah, what's up? Selling my second-hand house? Of course I am. As he walked out of the warehouse, Jiang waved nonchalantly. Take care of the food, Shang. I've got bigger fish to fry. Yang, still nursing his bruises, sidled up to Shang. You think he's scamming you, boss? Shang, still too stunned to speak, could only wonder how this former nobody had turned the tables so fast. The scene shifts to Jiang arriving home, his face a mix of smug satisfaction and mild disbelief as Grandpa Li shows up, clutching a bag of money like his life depended on it, which, given the apocalyptic times coming, it might. The old man, with his wrinkled hands shaking, offered the cash as a deposit, agreeing to leave Jiang's house in 3 months. Jiang blinked, barely containing his amusement as he asked, "You didn't even inspect the house before handing me all your money?" Grandpa Li, bless his old soul, looked as if Jiang had just questioned his entire life's worth of decisions. With a defeated sigh, Li explained that his granddaughter needed to transfer schools, and this was the only house available. Desperation etched every line on his face as he begged Jiang not to back out of the deal. Jiang raised an eyebrow, his internal sarcasm meter maxing out. "Not afraid I'll jack up the price after that sob story?" he mused. The old man nearly keeled over, probably one insult away from a heart attack. Li stammered about his family's savings, but Jiang waved him off with the assurance that he wouldn't back out. After all, it wasn't like Jiang had a heart, but he didn't need Grandpa Li keeling over and messing up his plans. They signed the contract, and Grandpa Li, looking like he had just been pardoned from death row, bowed so low that Jiang thought the old fool might end up kissing the dirt. Honest people like you aren't going to last 5 minutes when the apocalypse hits, Jiang thought, barely holding back a chuckle. As Grandpa Li turned to leave, Jiang called out, "By the way, where do you live now? Just curious." Li gave him the address, none the wiser, and shuffled off into the sunset like some tragic peasant. The next day, Jiang strutted over to the construction site, his new fortress nearly ready. The construction manager, probably hungry for his next paycheck like a dog waiting for scraps, asked for the second batch of funds. Jiang gave him the usual excuse. "I'll transfer it soon." He wasn't lying, sort of. The manager showed him around, pointing out the reinforced walls and doors, like Jiang was about to star in some apocalyptic reality show. "Safe as can be," the manager beamed, as if Jiang was paying him to care. They moved toward the warehouse, which was already cleaned up and ready to be stocked. Cue a call to Shang, the dumb bully, who arrived with the truckload of goods, none the wiser that Jiang was playing him like a fiddle. Workers began unloading the supplies, blissfully unaware that their lives were about to be cut short by the apocalypse. They made comments about how the place looked like a shelter for the rich, completely oblivious to the fact that they'd be lucky to survive the next few months. Jiang smirked, watching his fortress of canned goods and rice grow taller by the minute. By nightfall, the underpaid workers scurried out, leaving Jiang alone with his towering stash of apocalypse-ready supplies. The system chimed in, congratulating him on completing the 10 years' worth of supplies task and rewarding him with 20 points. Scanning the system store, Jiang's eyes widened when he spotted a new item, a box that would grant him an awakening ability. Excited like a kid on Christmas morning, Jiang purchased the box and unlocked the Mind's Eye, a neat little power that would let him detect hostile intentions. "Perfect," he muttered to himself. Now he could tell exactly who wanted to slit his throat for a can of soup when the apocalypse kicked off. One of the most useful powers in the early days, he grinned, knowing this ability would keep him one step ahead of the hungry, desperate masses. As the system dinged with his next task, arming himself, Jiang's eyes gleamed with mischief. "Oh, that's exactly what I had in mind," he whispered to the empty warehouse, already imagining the chaos to come. The bustling nighttime market, where the clueless pre-apocalypse fools were busy shopping for rare items that wouldn't matter in about a week. The vendors had the same deadpan look you see on every customer service worker's face, tired, angry, and on the verge of telling someone to shove it. Jiang strolled through, listening to the petty haggling going on around him. People were debating whether an item was real or fake, and the vendors, barely holding on to their patience, were trying not to strangle the idiots with their own overpriced trinkets. Jiang's attention was soon grabbed by the world's dumbest negotiation. Some fat customer was trying to knock the price of an item from $2,000 down to $300. Yep, you read that right. The vendor looked like he was about to slap the guy upside the head, wondering if anyone actually did business like that. And who was this cheapskate? None other than Shang, the walking embodiment of idiocy, trying to haggle as if the apocalypse was going to give him a break because he saved 50 cents. Jiang shook his head, wondering why this fool was so obsessed with buying fake bracelets on the black market. For someone who loved to brag, Shang was nothing more than a glorified bargain hunter, always looking for a cheap way to show off. Jiang thought about how Shang probably tricked his crazy ex-girlfriend, Kui Jing, with one of these counterfeit goods. Good job, Shang. You played yourself. Leaving the circus act behind, Jiang found what he was really after. Weapons. Swords, machetes, you name it. They were all on display, gleaming under the market lights like the promise of a very bloody future. He wasn't the only one eyeing the blades, though. There were others, people who clearly had a taste for slicing and dicing. Jiang grinned, knowing he was in good company. He approached the vendor and began handling one of the blades like he was some kind of expert swordsman. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. Jiang asked for something hard, and no, we're not talking about sausages. The vendor, already annoyed by Jiang's vague request, handed him a knife sharpener and sarcastically told him to go to work. Or, buy a baton if sharpening a blade was too much effort for the delicate Jiang. But Jiang wasn't satisfied. Not hard enough, he insisted. Yeah, this conversation was getting awkward. The vendor was getting visibly irritated, probably wondering if Jiang was just here to waste his time. Then Jiang dropped the bomb, a hefty credit transfer. The vendor's face did a 180 when he saw the money hit his account. Suddenly, this annoying kid was his favorite customer. With a newfound sense of respect, the vendor agreed to show Jiang something harder in private. Don't worry, folks, it's not what it sounds like. The vendor led Jiang to what looked like a regular house, but inside the guy had an entire collection of homemade guns. Cheap, sure, but deadly enough to take down a chicken or two. Jiang wasn't impressed. The vendor, at this point probably thinking Jiang was the most demanding customer of all time, showed him a replica revolver. Decent enough, but still cheap. Jiang was pissed. After all the money he'd sent, this guy had the nerve to show him second-rate junk? Jiang made it clear he wasn't here for a starter kit. He wanted weapons worth $2 million. The vendor's face said it all. He thought Jiang had completely lost it. Who the hell is this kid, and what kind of apocalypse is he preparing for? The vendor probably thought, but wisely kept his mouth shut. He asked Jiang what he did for a living, probably wondering if he'd need to flee the country after this sale. But Jiang brushed him off, saying his subordinates usually handled trivial matters. Not creepy at all, right? Realizing Jiang was serious, the vendor locked the doors and closed the windows like they were about to pull off some shady deal. Which, let's be honest, they kind of were. The vendor whispered that he'd give Jiang an address and told him to come with cash in a few days to complete the transaction. Jiang left feeling accomplished until, of course, he ran into the bane of his existence, Shang. Just the sound of Shang's voice made Jiang want to vomit. The fat fool was surprised to see him at the black market, as if Jiang didn't have better things to do than explain his life choices to this degenerate. Shang assumed Jiang was there to sell off family heirlooms and had the nerve to mock him for spending lavishly. Jiang wasn't fazed. In fact, he saw this as the perfect moment to test his new mind's eye ability. Activating it, Jiang could now see icons above everyone's heads. The vendor had a friendly icon, while Shang's practically screamed enemy. No surprise there. Jiang decided to mess with him, mocking Shang for probably tricking Kui Jing with fake goods just to get her into bed. Shang, of course, had nothing to say in his defense. The vendor, now acting like Jiang's loyal lackey thanks to the cash he was given, offered to take care of Shang. Jiang, always the tactician, told him not to kill the idiot. He still had plans for the fat fool. As the vendor's goons approached Shang, the once proud buffoon turned into a trembling coward, trying to negotiate his way out of a beating. Too late. The vendor and his lackeys gave Shang the beating of his life. As he lay there, bruised and humiliated, Shang swore he'd get revenge on Jiang. Jiang? He didn't even care. 2 days later, in the bone-chilling dead of night, Jiang stood in front of his brand-new arsenal. Delivered discreetly by a truck to his warehouse, it was a collection of guns that would make any doomsday prepper drool. Mission accomplished, right? Well, not quite. The system, because it loves to play puppet master, awarded Jiang with 10 points for completing his little arms race. Bonus reward: 2 physical enhancement potions. Now, if you're imagining some magical elixir in a fancy bottle, lower your expectations. These potions were basically syringes, because nothing says level up like being forced to stick yourself with a needle. Jiang, probably wondering if the system had turned into his personal drug dealer, examined the syringe. He noticed that it was just as potent as the ones he saw in the store. Fantastic. He lifted one arm, braced himself like he was about to inject himself with pure pain, and bam, he did it. The moment the drug entered his system, Jiang's face contorted in agony, teeth clenched like he was trying to bite through steel. His eyes rolled back, turning completely white, as if he was either on the verge of ecstatic bliss or about to kick the bucket. Honestly, it was a toss-up. Fortunately for him, this wasn't the end of his second chance at life. According to Jiang's inner calculations, the average man had a strength of 5. After this delightful little syringe session, his strength increased by a whopping 40%. He rolled up his fists, trying to get a feel for this newfound power, but let's be real. He still looked like the same useless loser from 2 days ago. But for Jiang, this wasn't enough. It was never enough. So, what does he do? He opens up the system store and buys another enhancement potion. You'd think he'd get used to the whole injecting process, but nope. He winced like a toddler getting their first shot. With the extra boost, he now had a total of 8 points, giving him 60% more strength than the average Joe. Impressive, right? Sure, but he still needed a punching bag to test this out. Looking around, Jiang's eyes landed on some bags of cement and a few steel rods lying on the floor. He hesitated for a moment, probably questioning whether he was about to embarrass himself again. But there was only one way to find out. Channeling his inner Bruce Lee, because obviously watching kung fu movies makes you a martial arts expert, Jiang kicked the steel rod. It bent and flew across the room, crashing into the wall and cracking it. Suddenly, he felt like the big bad boss of this impending apocalypse, convinced that early-stage zombies didn't stand a chance against him now. Feeling all too pleased with himself, Jiang decided it was time to stash the guns in his space ring. The weapon crates shrank down, getting sucked into the ring like they were being pulled into a black hole. Efficient? Yes. Creepy? Also yes. With his preparations for the apocalypse almost complete, Jiang started mentally checking off his to-do list. Then, like an annoying pop-up ad, the memory of Grandpa Lee surfaced. The old man had come to him, begging for help for his granddaughter, saying they needed his house to survive. Of course, Jiang, after being betrayed by humans so many times, couldn't fully shake off his newfound cynicism. He thought, why do I care about this old fool's sob story? But despite his better judgment, he decided to send Grandpa Lee a care package of essential supplies for the apocalypse. Let the old man survive or become a tombstone, Jiang muttered, half annoyed that he couldn't just ignore the situation. After all, this was his twisted way of repaying the guy for funding his apocalypse plan. The next day, as the sun dragged itself over a bleak sky, a black car pulled into what could generously be described as a neighborhood, the kind of place where even cockroaches would need a GPS to find their way out. Jiang stepped out of the car, looking around at the derelict buildings. Who the hell still lives here, he thought, feeling the familiar irritation rising in his chest. Of course, Grandpa Lee, that senile old man, was holed up in one of these dilapidated apartments, probably too cheap to upgrade even after the apocalypse started sending out its RSVPs. Jiang had to trek up all the way to the top floor, grumbling the whole time. By the time he reached the door, he was half tempted to just dump the supplies and run. As he pulled the boxes from his space ring, because explaining that to the old man would have been a whole other headache, he knocked on the door, mentally preparing himself for whatever nonsense was about to come out of Grandpa Lee's mouth. Sure enough, the door creaked open and the old man shuffled out, his legs looking like they could snap at any moment. "I'll pay the rent by next Monday," Lee croaked, eyes squinting like he couldn't even see who was standing in front of him. Jiang rolled his eyes. The man had barely 2 functioning brain cells, and it was obvious one of them was on strike. But seconds later, Lee's foggy gaze cleared and recognition finally dawned on his face. "Jiang," Grandpa Lee's voice wheezed, then he saw the boxes. "What are all these for?" Jiang, not in the mood for small talk, waved him off. "I'll explain later. Just help me move them inside. And keep it quiet, okay? No need to alert the nosy neighbors. We're not doing anything illegal." Yet, predictably, Grandpa Lee was about as useful as a broken chair. Jiang ended up doing most of the heavy lifting, while the old man wheezed and stumbled around, complaining about how young folks had so much stamina these days. Jiang nearly laughed out loud. The way Lee was moving, carrying a single box, probably would have sent him straight to his grave. Once the supplies were inside, Jiang started inspecting the room like a paranoid thief, checking the door and windows for sturdiness. Meanwhile, Grandpa Lee was babbling about how he and his granddaughter would move in soon. Jiang wasn't even listening. He'd done his good deed, and if the old man wanted to die in some rundown shack, that was his business. But then something caught Jiang's eye. A photo sitting on a dusty table. In it, an elderly Grandpa Lee stood next to a beautiful, brown-haired girl. Jiang's eyes narrowed. No way. He recognized her immediately. Shin, a girl he'd, been close with in his previous life. The surprise hit him like a punch to the gut. "Is your granddaughter's name Ming Shin?" he asked, voice unusually serious. Lee blinked in shock. "How did you know? I never mentioned her name to you." Jiang's mood shifted, the cocky smirk fading as a cold intensity replaced it. "Where is she?" "She's still studying in our hometown," Lee replied. "But once we move, she'll be coming to stay with me." Jiang didn't respond, but his mind was already racing, memories from his past life flashing by. Shin crying on his shoulder, telling him how her grandfather had died, saving her from a school overrun with the undead. A pang of guilt stabbed at him. He had failed her before. He wouldn't fail again. "I've changed my mind," Jiang Xiaoyong said suddenly, his tone flat and decisive. "You're not moving houses anymore." Grandpa Lee's face went slack with confusion. "What? But we've already made arrangements." Jiang shot him a sharp look. "You won't be moving because the world's about to end tomorrow. People are going to drown in suffering. Your house, your granddaughter's school, it's all about to be wiped out." Lee just stared, completely bewildered. To him, Jiang might as well have been speaking in tongues. "What are you talking about?" Lee muttered, his voice filled with disbelief. "Are you feeling all right, Jiang? Maybe you're the one with dead brain cells." Frustration surged through Jiang. He didn't have time for this. "I'm trying to save you, you stubborn old man. Do you have any idea what's coming? Hunger, chaos, death. You'll be lucky if you don't end up as some zombie's appetizer." Still, Grandpa Li looked unconvinced, so Jiang decided to give him a little demonstration. With a wave of his hand, he sucked all the supplies back into his spatial ring. Li's eyes went wide in terror, the man practically jumping out of his skin. "What? What did you just do? Is this dark magic?" Jiang sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "No, it's not dark magic, you idiot. I have superpowers, okay? I can see the future. And in that future, if you don't listen to me, you and your granddaughter are going to die. Got it?" Li just stood there, eyes wide with shock, clearly not processing anything Jiang had said. But Jiang wasn't about to let this old fool derail his plans. "We're leaving now. You're going to show me where Shin's school is, and then I'll take you somewhere safe. You got that?" Li nodded, though it was clear he still thought Jiang had gone completely insane. Nevertheless, they left the house and got into Jiang's car. As they sped through the streets, Grandpa Li kept glancing at him nervously, like he was sitting next to a ticking time bomb. When they finally arrived at the school, Jiang turned to Li. "Do you know which class and dormitory Shin is in?" For once, Li didn't fail him. He gave the information quickly, which probably saved him from being thrown out of the car on the spot. With the clock ticking and the apocalypse looming, they rushed inside to find Shin. Jiang's heart pounded, not with fear, but with determination. The scene shifted to the middle of a typical high school horror show. Delinquents, their collective IQs barely scraping double digits, had circled around Shin, their fists and kicks doing the talking. Shin, on the receiving end of this barrage, wasn't even sure what she'd done this time. Oh, right. Some guy named Jiang Xiaoyong had a crush on her, and apparently that was enough to send these insecure idiots into a jealous rage. Now, instead of working on their riz skills, maybe, I don't know, a little charm or basic hygiene, they figured the best way to win the guy over was to beat the life out of Shin. Smart plan. Absolutely flawless. Shin, bruised and tired, tried to explain that it was all one-sided. Jiang liked her. She didn't even know the guy's favorite color, let alone how to deal with his unwanted attention. But of course, logic wasn't exactly in these bullies' wheelhouse. They responded with more kicks and hair-pulling. Classic. She let out a yelp when one particularly aggressive pull nearly scalped her. Apparently happy noises weren't just for romantic moments. Who knew? Before her situation could go from bad to worse, a voice rang out. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The girls, too deep in their stupidity to care, barely glanced up. But Shin did. Jiang and Grandpa Li had arrived. Though, looking at Li, Shin was more confused than relieved. What the hell was he doing at her school? You'd think Shin would be a little grateful for this surprise intervention. Nope, just confusion and a slight tinge of embarrassment. Fantastic. Grandpa Li, shaking with age but trying to sound authoritative, shouted at the bullies to release his granddaughter. Of course, to the gang of delinquents, he looked about as threatening as a wet sock. One of them, the leader with a bad bleach job, strutted up with a knife in hand. "Stay out of this, old man. You don't want to mess with us." Grandpa Li, bless his senile heart, didn't back down. "You're all a bunch of mannerless fools, bullying a defenseless girl. I'll show you what a real man." He didn't get to finish. Another delinquent wielding a bat was about to send Li straight to the pearly gates when Jiang stepped in, grabbing the bat mid-swing. Can you even call it an early grave at this point? The old man looked like he'd been eligible for retirement. Forever. Jiang, ever the sarcastic savior, sneered at the punk. "You're what, 16? And already a wannabe thug? How's that career path working out for you?" Of course, the gang wasn't impressed by Jiang's wiry frame. They saw him as just another poor guy trying to act tough, probably thinking he was Shin's little brother or something. Their underestimation was their first and biggest mistake. One of the bullies rushed at Jiang, bat raised high. Jiang didn't even flinch. With a single kick, the guy went airborne, flying through the air like a poorly thrown frisbee. The rest of the gang started taking him seriously. "This guy's trained," one of them gasped, as if they'd cracked the Da Vinci Code. The remaining bullies tried to gang up on him, a move straight out of the Moron's Guide to Fighting. But Jiang stayed calm, his face unreadable. As they circled him, one lunged with a bat. Jiang ducked, his reflexes off the charts, then grabbed the guy by the collar and slammed him into the pavement with enough force to send him into dreamland. The last fool came at him with a dagger, but Jiang weaved through the sloppy attack and kicked him down, nearly knocking him straight into the afterlife. With the guys dealt with, the girls, suddenly without their meathead backup, started trembling. One of them, assuming the worst, shakily asked, "What are you going to do to us?" Jiang's brow furrowed. The very idea that he'd be interested in them was laughable. They weren't his type, not even close. He strolled toward them and they flinched. He wasn't interested in words. He was interested in action. So he started slapping them around, dealing out swift punishment. One of them shrieked when he slapped her, appalled that a man would dare raise his hand against a woman. To Jiang, though, she wasn't a woman, just an overgrown, ugly gorilla with delusions of grandeur. The second girl had her hair yanked and she screeched like a banshee. "Let go of me!" Jiang's response? He pulled out a knife, holding it against her throat. Tears instantly filled her eyes, her bravado disappearing faster than her dignity. "What are you going to do?" she whimpered, her voice shaking like a leaf in a storm. He smirked, then swish. The other delinquents and Shin stared in disbelief, horror flashing across their faces. Had Jiang really just... Nah, of course not. Gotcha, he hadn't killed her, he just hacked off her precious locks. To this girl, though, that was practically a death sentence. You cut my hair!" she screamed, her voice reaching a pitch only dogs could hear. "I'll never forgive you." Jiang looked down at her like a god addressing a mere mortal. "Long hair's only going to slow you down, sweetheart. You'll thank me in a few days when the world's gone to hell." The girl was too furious, too heartbroken to understand his words. All she knew was that her hair was ruined. Her plans for dramatic hair flips, ruined. Any chance of making a cute ponytail? Ruined. Life, basically ruined. With the trash taken out, Jiang turned to Shin and Grandpa Li. "We're leaving," he said, his voice flat. Shin blinked, still dazed by everything that had just happened. "Leaving? Where are we going?" Jiang didn't have time for explanations. There was an apocalypse on the horizon after all. The car roared to life as they sped away from the school. Well, sped, in the sense that they moved at a pace that didn't involve getting harassed by zombies or idiots. Shin, sitting in the back seat with her head spinning, finally processed what Grandpa Li had just told her. She wasn't going back to school. Ever. "What do you mean I'm not going to school anymore?" she exclaimed, thinking that maybe the old man had lost his last few marbles. Li, with the sagely wisdom of someone who believed the end was nigh, calmly explained, "There's going to be a famine soon, Shin. No point in listening to those boring lectures when we're all about to starve." Shin blinked, trying to decide if this was some weird prank. Famine? Grandpa, have you been listening to those scam calls again?" Considering Li's age and his tendency to believe anything that sounded like an emergency broadcast, Shan wasn't entirely off base. Jiang, who had been driving with a smirk plastered on his face, couldn't help but relish in her disbelief. He was most likely delighted at the thought of finally having someone around to shower with his questionable affections. Meanwhile, Shin was practically diagnosing her grandfather with senility. "How much did they scam you for this time, Grandpa? You know better than to believe that nonsense." The two continued their verbal sparring as Jiang's grin grew wider. Finally, he chimed in, "Actually, I was the one who told your grandpa about the famine." Shin snapped her head toward him, narrowing her eyes in disbelief. "Wait, you can talk." "Name's Jiang," he said with a smoothness that didn't match his scruffy appearance. "But you can call me Brother Yang." "Brother Yang? More like Brother Weirdo," Shin muttered under her breath. She still couldn't believe this guy had actually been the one to fight off those bullies back at school. "Well, thanks for dealing with those fools," she added begrudgingly, "even if they weren't exactly a brain trust." Jiang waved her off, still smug. "Don't worry about them. They've got only a few days left in their miserable lives anyway." Her confusion only deepened. "Wait, what? What do you mean by that? Is there really going to be a famine?" Jiang chuckled darkly. "Not exactly. I used the idea of a famine to make it easier for your grandpa's deteriorating brain to understand." Shin felt an odd sense of relief, until Jiang burst that tiny bubble with a simple, terrifying word. "It's an apocalypse." Her jaw nearly hit the floor. What?" she stammered, thinking maybe she had misheard him. Jiang, ever the bearer of bad news, sighed. "Yeah, an apocalypse. End of the world. Zombies, chaos, you know. Fun stuff." Shin's eyes went wide, and without wasting a second, she grabbed her phone to check for any signs of impending doom. Her fingers flew across the screen, pulling up the latest news. A chill ran down her spine as she stumbled upon an article about a man with rabies attacking people like some deranged dog. Officers were shown on camera struggling to pin the crazed man down as he snarled and bit at them like, well, a zombie. More stories appeared about a strange smog that seemed to creep into the air, described as having an awful smell, like, as Shin mentally noted, Jiang after skipping several showers since the beginning of this bizarre ride. Her heart sank as more screams and panicked reports filled the screen. People were being bitten left and right, and she couldn't help but wonder if this nightmare was real. Was it really happening? The fear in her eyes must have been evident because Jiang chuckled again, this time in a way that made her blood run cold. "All part of the plan," he said, almost gleefully. "These are just the first signs. By tomorrow, it's full-blown apocalypse time. Get ready." Even as she looked at the news on her phone, Shin stupidly asked, "Are you sure this is an apocalypse?" Jiang raised an eyebrow at her. "Did I stutter? The whole world's going to hell, sweetheart." The next day was going to be the official start of the apocalypse, apparently, with toxic smog covering several provinces, including Province B. People would be running for their lives, unsuccessfully, of course, only to get turned into Happy Meals for zombies. She was about as ready for this as a toddler in a math competition. Jiang leaned back in his seat. "Don't worry, though, in a couple of weeks you'll be clinging to me like a desperate ex-girlfriend." Shan rolled her eyes. "Sure, buddy. Keep dreaming." As if the conversation wasn't already insane, they found themselves stuck in a traffic jam, which was exactly the kind of situation Jiang didn't have the patience for. Grandpa Li, naturally, started freaking out. "What if the zombies catch up to us while we're stuck here?" Jiang waved him off, still calm. "It's not that urgent yet. Relax." But of course, no situation was complete without some crackhead driver trying to cut them off. Jiang blocked the car, and the guy behind the wheel wasn't happy. He revved his engine and tried to sneak into the emergency lane, but Jiang wasn't about to let some fool get ahead of him. He slammed on the brakes, nearly sending Grandpa Li and Shin through the windshield. "Jiang!" Shin yelled, clutching her seatbelt. Jiang didn't seem to care. The other driver, a guy with a face like a spoiled rich kid, started yelling and cursing at them, but Jiang wasn't having it. He ignored the insults as Grandpa Li nervously advised him to let it go. "That guy looks rich and powerful," Li warned. Jiang, on the other hand, seemed ready to give the idiot a personal tour of the pavement if he stepped out of his car. I don't care who he is. He's going down if he messes with me. As the traffic started moving again, the reckless driver from before continued his antics, trying to cut in front of them. Shin noticed and warned Jiang, who was already on the verge of losing it. Finally, Jiang snapped, his patience gone. He weaved through traffic like he was auditioning for Fast and Furious, Apocalypse Edition, nearly causing the reckless driver to crash on the side of the road. The guy leaped out of his car, cursing Jiang and threatening to call the police. Yeah, call your daddy too while you're at it, Jiang muttered as he sped off, the apocalypse looming and a rich brat left in the dust. The night settled over the safe house, a towering fortress of concrete and steel that would make even a billionaire question whether they needed this much space. As the trio stepped out of the car, Grandpa Li and Shin gawked at the size of the place. The old man's jaw practically hit the ground, while Shin muttered, "This place is massive. Maybe a little too much?" Jiang, with a smirk on his face, clearly didn't think so. "Trust me, it won't feel too big when things get down and dirty," he said, leaving just enough room for her to wonder if he was talking about the apocalypse or something else. Spoiler alert, it wasn't the zombies on his mind. "Get some rest," Jiang instructed, trying to keep his thoughts clean for at least one night. "The next few days are going to make this mansion feel like a 5-star prison." Morning came too soon. Jiang stood in front of his panoramic window, sipping coffee like he was a model in a dystopian coffee ad. Shin stumbled out of her room, yawning and stretching like she hadn't slept that well in years. "Wow, I didn't have to wake up like I was in boot camp. No morning classes, no alarms, just actual sleep," she said, more to herself than anyone else. Meanwhile, Jiang, for once, looked genuinely happy for her. Or maybe he was just happy he hadn't done anything too stupid yet, considering Grandpa Li was still in the picture. Jiang was about to suggest checking out the fortress. Finally, some alone time, right? But of course, Grandpa Li, the ultimate third wheel, decided to tag along. No romantic strolls around the fortress for Jiang, just a nice family outing. Apocalypse style. As they walked, Jiang gave them a tour like he was a real estate agent trying to sell them on a doomsday bunker. "The walls are reinforced concrete," he said, "and the gate, pure steel. Unless someone shows up with heavy artillery, nobody's getting in. Not zombies, not desperate humans, only the 3 of us are allowed in here." Shin, ever the voice of conscience, asked, "So, if survivors show up, we're just going to let them die outside like a bunch of useless trash?" Jiang ignored her question, leading them on like an annoyed parent at a theme park, saying, "Follow me." His tone was practically screaming, "I'm not here to babysit a moral compass. We're surviving an apocalypse, people." He gave them the usual apocalypse pep talk. "Trust no one, expect betrayal, and watch the world's dark side come out like it's been waiting for its moment to shine." They made their way to the back of the fortress, where Jiang revealed what he called the buffer zone. A massive open area lined with crates and a small shelter sprawled before them. "If survivors show up while I'm gone, they can stay here," Jiang explained. "But they're not getting inside the fortress, not until I'm back." Grandpa Li and Shin exchanged uneasy glances, but before they could voice their concerns, Jiang was already moving on. "Next stop, food storage. The most important thing during an apocalypse," he said, pausing dramatically. "And if food runs out, well, I guess we might have to start eating each other." The awkward silence that followed was broken only by Jiang's wicked grin. "Not in the way you're thinking," he added sarcastically, eyes twinkling with dark humor. Inside the food warehouse, Jiang suddenly stopped and turned to face them. He activated his mind's eye ability, which, as far as Shin could tell, just looked like he was staring off into space like an idiot. Li and Shin exchanged confused glances, but Jiang saw something else entirely. Above their heads, two happy emojis floated, signaling that they trusted him fully, completely unaware of his underlying weirdness. This was the first time he'd seen it, which meant they were either very trusting or very dumb. Either way, it worked in his favor. Jiang snapped back to reality and pulled a weapon crate from his ring. "Weapons," he said, as if this was the gospel. "More important than food, because without them, you won't live long enough to enjoy that can of beans." Shin and Grandpa Li stared at the weapons, clearly taken aback by the severity of the situation. Shin picked up a crossbow like she was auditioning for a medieval zombie flick, while Grandpa Li held a shotgun with the same enthusiasm one might reserve for holding a soggy mop. "Keep these under control," Jiang instructed, "and for God's sake, don't let them fall into enemy hands." Li, looking ridiculously out of place with the shotgun, nodded solemnly. You could almost hear the sound of his two brain cells colliding as he processed the situation. "Sure, Grandpa Li, you'll keep control of that shotgun. No problem." As they finished the tour, a system notification popped up in Jiang's mind. Apparently, he'd completed a task, reuniting with Shin. Great, he thought. Only now the system wanted him to find and rescue his former companion, Jiang Kai. Like he didn't already have enough on his plate with the whole end-of-the-world thing. The system showed him an arrow pointing in the direction of where Kai was. Super helpful, since Jiang had no idea where his old comrade had disappeared to. Without much ceremony, Jiang bolted for the door, leaving a bewildered Shin and Grandpa Li in his dust. "Remember what I told you! Don't break the rules!" he shouted, sprinting like the apocalypse had just hit the gas pedal. "Where are you going?" Shin called after him. "To recruit more people," Jiang yelled back. "Gotta strengthen the team." Because nothing says team building like a zombie apocalypse. The scene shifts to the city, right to a KTV joint. Classy, right? No. A bunch of ugly dudes, uglier than a drunk Picasso sketch, were belting out karaoke hits like they were auditioning for Worst Idols Ever. The table was drowning in drinks, probably enough booze to fuel an army of regrets. Two of these idiots decided it was time to hit the restroom. Of course, the fat one had to drag his gray-haired friend, who was wobbling like a baby deer on ice. The fat guy, being the responsible genius he was, told his drunken buddy to eat slowly and not choke, because that's totally a normal thing to say, right? Oh, but it gets weirder. The gray-haired drunk promised to pack something for him to take back. Yeah, that's not raising any red flags. Nothing suspicious about two guys who can barely walk, whispering sweet nothings about packing something in a KTV restroom. Let's not ask questions we don't want answers to. After their suspicious restroom shenanigans, they stumble back out, probably feeling a bit too good about themselves. A gray-haired guy in all his wobbly glory manages to bump into a girl who's walking with her man. He apologized. Simple mistake, right? But nope. This was the moment the girl's idiot boyfriend had been waiting for, his big hero moment. He kicked the gray-haired guy so hard the poor fool went flying, probably wishing he was still in that bathroom doing whatever the hell they were doing. His fat friend, who's probably never seen the inside of a gym, let's be honest, came waddling over to check on him. And just like that, we get the big reveal. The gray-haired dude's name is Jiang Kai, the very guy Jiang's been searching for. Surprise! Only instead of a heroic entrance, we've got him being punted like a football in a KTV. His fat friend starts yelling at the idiot who kicked Jiang Kai, trying to sound tough. But the man, a true piece of work, wasn't having it. He probably thought, how dare this walking tub of lard talk back to me? His ego, already inflated beyond repair, took this as an insult, and he grabbed the fat guy by the collar, hoisting him up like a sack of potatoes. Jiang Kai, bless his drunken soul, tried to defuse the situation. He apologized, begged the guy to leave his friend alone. You know, because being civil in a room full of testosterone and alcohol always works. Just as things were about to get worse, some poor underpaid worker crawled out of the restroom, still recovering from an upset stomach and a cold. Lucky him, right? He tried to calm the situation, but this only made the thug feel even more disrespected. The guy, who clearly had a lot to prove to his troll-looking girlfriend, started throwing threats around like candy. My boss wouldn't dare grab my clothes, but here you are. Because, sure, the world revolves around his fragile masculinity. The worker, who was probably regretting all of his life choices at this point, told Jiang Kai and his friend to just leave while he dealt with this walking disaster of a man. But no, the thug wasn't done yet. Oh no. He demanded that they call his boss, acting like he owned the joint. He even threw in a threat to shut down the entire karaoke bar, as if his word had that kind of power. Classic. Aunt Jiang Kai and his friend, realizing that the situation had gone from bad to "we're about to die in a KTV," ran back to their group like a couple of scared puppies. Their companions, probably hoping for a good laugh, asked them if they were being chased by a dog. Oh, if only. Kai, still breathless, explained that they bumped into a drunk moron who wanted to fight. Luckily, they were saved by the hero of the hour, the poor, sickly waiter. Otherwise, they'd probably be nursing some broken bones right about now. One of the guys in the group wasn't impressed. He slammed his drink down and started barking about how the fat guy didn't fight back. Of course, this genius, the group's resident musclehead, bragged about how their mechanical engineering class never backed down from a fight. Because, clearly, engineering students are known for their martial arts skills. He looked ready to throw down right then and there, saying he'd call in more of their brothers to teach the thug a lesson. Another guy, the one with the white jacket, stared at him like he had finally lost his last brain cell. Jiang Kai, trying to be the voice of reason in this circus, told the musclehead to stop showing off. They were graduating in less than a year. Last thing they needed was more trouble on their hands. "Let's just enjoy the music and keep dancing," he said, as if anyone could relax with a bloodthirsty thug prowling around. But then, wouldn't you know it, the thug walks right in. And he didn't come alone. Oh no. He brought his crew of lackeys, each looking dumber than the last, with the poor, barely conscious waiter stumbling behind them. Jiang Kai and his friends were shocked to see the state of the waiter, who looked like he was one sneeze away from collapsing. The thug pointed straight at them and told his goons to teach them a lesson, because of course this entire night was about showing off to his ugly girlfriend. Jiang Kai and his group were immediately rounded up like criminals and made to kneel with their hands behind their heads, like they were auditioning for a really bad crime show. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, the musclehead, because he just couldn't keep his mouth shut, demanded to make a call. Brilliant, right? Instead of getting his phone, though, he got a bottle smashed on his head, sending him bleeding all over the place. Jiang Kai, horrified, screamed his name, "Chen Chong!" But the damage was done. All this chaos because some pathetic thug wanted to impress his troll of a girlfriend. The scene shifts again, this time to our clueless hero, Jiang, who arrives at the karaoke bar, totally unaware of the circus unfolding inside. The butlers at the door usher him in like he's royalty, but Jiang, with his usual flair for sarcasm, mutters, "The world's ending and my friends are singing karaoke?" Typical. Inside, it's a full-blown disaster. Chong's head is practically a fountain, gushing blood after one of the thugs decided a bottle smash was the best way to make a point. The thug, a classic tough guy with the brain power of a doorknob, still clutched the broken bottle, ready for another round. Jiang Kai, our poor gray-haired dude, called out in horror to his friend, who was rapidly losing more blood than a cheap horror flick. Meanwhile, Mr. Tough Guy was preoccupied with his troll of a girlfriend, who, unsurprisingly, looked about as impressed as someone watching paint dry. She even had the nerve to complain about her nail polish, asking, What's there to feel better about? Lady, your boyfriend's playing hero for you. At least pretend to care. But no, she pointed out the obvious. He wasn't even dealing with the guy who bumped into her. Ouch! With his fragile ego bruised, the thug turned his attention to Jiang Kai, waving the broken bottle in his face like some demented sword. Meanwhile, Chong, bleeding and clearly running on adrenaline, grabbed an ashtray, ready to exact some revenge. Oh, this is gonna be good, you think. But no. His valiant attempt is immediately shut down as the goons restrain him like he's a rowdy toddler. One of the thugs mocked him, calling him a little punk, while Chong struggled in vain, looking about as threatening as a wet kitten. Thug leader, clearly not expecting any resistance from the likes of Chong, was seething, his teeth gritted so hard they probably needed dental work. In a fit of rage, he smashed another bottle on Chong's head, because why stop at one? Glass and wine sprayed everywhere, and Chong collapsed like a sack of potatoes, knocked out cold. Jiang Kai and his friends were frozen in shock. You could practically see the cartoon steam coming out of one of their heads as the rage built up. Finally, enough was enough. Jiang Kai and the fatso charged at the thug leader, ready to turn him into a human pancake. Meanwhile, another one of their friends stood back, clutching a baseball bat like he'd just stumbled onto the set of The Warriors. Oh, and let's not forget the poor waiter cowering in the corner, shaking like a leaf, as if his very existence depended on staying invisible. As the chaos escalated, the thugs shouted insults at Jiang Kai, calling him a punk for daring to fight back. Things were spiraling out of control. Li Si, one of the muscle-brained thugs, was ordered to make sure someone never saw the light of day again. Yeah, real classy stuff happening here. While everyone was busy trying to beat each other into oblivion, the waiter was having a full-blown meltdown. Cold sweat poured off him, and his veins bulged out like some twisted science experiment gone wrong. He looked like he was about to Hulk out. Or worse. Then, with blood dripping from his eyes and a full-on zombie transformation in progress, the waiter went from pathetic to terrifying in 0 seconds flat. Zombie waiter didn't waste any time. He lunged at one of the thugs, sinking his teeth into the poor guy like he was an all-you-can-eat buffet. The thug screamed in agony, calling the waiter a dog, as if that was going to help. And troll girlfriend. She screamed like she'd just realized she wasn't the center of attention anymore. Amidst all this carnage, one bystander stood frozen, hands on his head, probably wishing he was still at home watching Netflix. He screamed like the useless side character he was, contributing absolutely nothing to the madness. The thugs, who still hadn't clocked that they were dealing with a literal zombie, tried to fight back. But Zombie Waiter was relentless, grabbing yet another thug and tearing into him like a rabid dog. One thug called him a good-for-nothing, which, given the situation, was about as helpful as a screen door on a submarine. The guy screamed as the zombie's teeth sank deeper into his arm, threatening to rip it clean off. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, Jiang, yes, the man, the myth, the protagonist, appeared. Like some twisted superhero. With a single hand, he grabbed the zombie by the neck and lifted him like he weighed nothing. Everyone in the room looked on in disbelief, jaws practically hitting the floor. Jiang, clearly not in the mood for pleasantries, smashed the zombie into a glass wall, letting the shards cut him up, nice and slow. The zombie was still trying to break free, but Jiang's grip was ironclad. With a menacing look, he ordered the thugs to stop their nonsense. The thug who had just been chewed on was beyond terrified, stammering something about how strong the zombie was, not understanding how Jiang could pin him down so easily. Newsflash, buddy, you're not dealing with a normal human here. But, of course, Thug Leader had to ruin the moment. Instead of thanking Jiang for saving their miserable lives, he puffed up his chest and demanded to know who Jiang was. Like, really? A literal zombie just wrecked your crew, and this is the time to act tough. As if on cue, one of the bitten thugs started coughing, clutching his head in confusion. His boss, still blissfully unaware, thought it was just a cold. Jiang, already piecing together what was happening, asked the coughing thug if he'd been bitten by the zombie. The thug, struggling to understand the situation, confirmed it, completely clueless to the fact that he was about 2 minutes away from turning into zombie #2. Purple veins started crawling across his skin, but nobody else seemed to catch on. With the transformation well underway, Jiang, calm as ever, dragged the original zombie out the door like a sack of trash and slammed it shut. The zombie banged on the door, but Jiang knew they were safe. For now. Dusting off his hands, he turned to the others, all of whom were staring at him like he'd just come down from another planet. Then, with a deadly calm, Jiang's mood shifted, and the killing intent radiated from him like a storm. He cracked his knuckles and asked Kai which thug he should take out first. Jiang Kai, understandably confused, asked if they knew each other, but Jiang wasn't about to waste time with introductions. As expected, Thug Leader, too stupid to know when he was beat, rushed at Jiang, fist flying in slow motion. Jiang didn't flinch. Before the punch could land, he grabbed the idiot by the head and slammed him to the ground, knocking him out cold. Another thug, still bleeding from his zombie bite, tried to charge at Jiang, but he was no match for Jiang's lightning-fast moves. Jiang landed a punch right to his nose, sending him crashing to the floor. With everyone else knocked out or too scared to move, Jiang stood there like a character straight out of a video game, ready for whatever came next. One of the goons, knocked out cold, foaming at the mouth like a cheap rabid dog. His partner, let's call him Mr. Oblivious, rushes to his side, asking why his buddy's flopping around like a fish out of water. Oh, sweet summer child. He had no idea that his dear friend was about to become the star of his own zombie flick. But hey, why bother with common sense when you can keep your head firmly planted where the sun don't shine? Meanwhile, our hero Jiang is standing there feeling like he's the hottest thing since microwave pizza. The guy just flattened someone with one punch and is still itching for more action. Anyone else want a piece of me? He asks, probably assuming this would go the way of every other action movie, with thugs trembling in fear. Spoiler, this isn't that kind of story. Jiang Kai, bless his heart, follows orders like a good little minion, dragging his unconscious friend Chong out of the private room like they're hauling out trash after a long night of binge drinking. It's not like Chong was contributing to the plot much anyway. But wait, the thug leader, bless his delusional little heart, still has a shred of bravado left. You know, the kind that only kicks in when you're too dumb to realize you've already lost. He and his goons try to slip out quietly, but of course Jiang's not done with them yet. Oh no, our man of the hour blocks the door like, where do you think you're going? Did we forget something? Like, oh, I don't know, you almost killing my brother. The thug leader, proving once again that arrogance and stupidity go hand in hand, tells Jiang to buzz off. Jiang's eyes, blank, dead inside, a look that says, I'm 2 seconds away from ripping your head off and you're still talking. And talk he does, until Jiang shoves him hard right into the reality check he so desperately needed. This idiot even has the nerve to say he's going to kill Jiang. Sure, buddy. The guy who just held another man up by his throat with one hand? Yeah, I'm sure that's going to work out for you. But before he can even make good on that empty threat, Jiang calmly walks out and locks the door behind him. And inside? Well, the party's just getting started. That guy who got bit on the shoulder earlier. He's now fully zombified and ready for a midnight snack. His comrades? They're so smart that they try to reason with him. Hey, buddy, why are you acting so weird? Gee, I don't know, maybe it's the feral roar and the fact that he's no longer human. Clueless idiots. Outside the door, Jiang, He's listening to all the chaos like it's just a podcast episode about how not to die. Voices scream for help, bodies thud against the walls, but Jiang, he's chill. So chill that when a terrified worker asks if everything's okay, Jiang calmly tells him to lock the door and call the police, and then drops the bombshell. Rabid flu. Yep, you heard that right. Rabid flu. This poor worker, frozen solid, probably trying to process if Jiang just said flu or if he's hallucinating. Meanwhile, Jiang's losing patience faster than a parent with a screaming toddler in a grocery store. After barking at him to get moving, the worker fumbles with the keys like he's never used his hands before. At this rate, the zombies inside will figure out how to break down the door faster than this guy can lock it. Jiang, being the cool-headed survivor that he is, doesn't wait around for this circus to end. He gathers Jiang Kai, Fatso, and the unconscious Chong, and they're out of there. The worker? Still struggling to do his one job, but instead of, locking the door, he decides it's a good time to listen to the blood-curdling noises coming from the other side. What could possibly go wrong? Now, let's switch gears to the security room, where another pair of geniuses is about to discover the disaster unfolding right under their noses. The two workers sprint to the surveillance room, and what do they find? A buffet of flesh. The security guy is glued to the monitors, looking like he just witnessed his worst nightmare. And on screen, the thug leader, his goons, and, oh look, his girlfriend, all having the worst dinner party ever. Except this time, she's not just some arm candy. No, she's dessert. As the workers panic and scramble to call the police, you can't help but wonder, are they inviting the cops to stop the zombies, or just to join the buffet? We see Jiang and his ragtag crew finally making it outside where his car awaits. What should be a moment of relief feels more like a ticking time bomb. He wastes no time barking at them to hurry up because, it's not like a club full of zombies is anything to dawdle about. Things are about to go from bad to, oh God, why am I still alive? They pile into the car. Chong still unconscious because of course he is. And they speed off to safety, or at least somewhere less life-threatening than ground zero of the zombie outbreak. Inside the car, Jen Kai, always the sentimental type, thanks Jiang for saving them and then asks the million-dollar question, who are you? The kind of question you should probably ask before getting into a car with a guy who just massacred half a club. Jiang, the ever-charming knight in not-so-shining armor, calmly introduces himself, saying he was hired to protect them. He doesn't say by who, because why bother with details when you're surrounded by a bunch of nobodies who were 2 seconds away from becoming zombie chow? Then one of the guys sitting in the back, clearly still operating with half a brain, asks the most brilliant question of the night. Is the rabid flu real? Because sure, after watching your friends turn into drooling monsters and nearly having your face eaten off, this is the time for internet conspiracy theories. Jiang, in all his multitasking glory, completely ignores the fact that he's driving and turns around to address the idiot. Maybe his superpowers include eyes on the back of his head? Who knows? He basically asks if this genius thinks the entire flesh-eating freak show they just witnessed was an illusion. Reality check. No, my friend, you're not in a horror movie. This is real life and it sucks. Choi, another member of this intellectually challenged crew, nervously pipes up asking if there's a cure for this so-called rabid flu. Jiang, ever the bearer of good news, tells them, nope, it's only going to get worse. Great pep talk for a group that's barely holding it together. But just as they're processing that lovely piece of info, a scream pierces the night. Oh joy, what now? They look out the window to see a zombie chowing down on some poor civilian who's screaming for help. And of course, because people are still clinging to the hope that this is all just a flu outbreak, the victim blames it on the rabid flu. Jiang, he's not even fazed. He casually explains that this is just a localized outbreak. Yeah, Small-scale horror for now, but soon, oh, soon it's going to spread like a virus at a kindergarten sleepover. Jiang gives his new posse a grim choice. If they want to survive this rapidly spiraling nightmare, they'll need to follow his orders. No questions asked. And guess what? They all agree, nodding like scared puppies, except for Chong, who's still living his best unconscious life. Seriously, can someone wake this guy up already? Then, as if life couldn't get any weirder, Jiang gets a notification from some system that his mission is complete, and he's earned an extra 20 points. You know, the usual stuff that happens when you're still behind the wheel, trying to drive a car while the world collapses around you. He opens up his virtual store, scanning the items like he's shopping for apocalypse survival gear at the mall. A post-apocalyptic cultivator box? Sure, why not? Because if there's one thing you need during the end of the world, it's a fancy box. He promises himself he'll buy the whole store when he gets back to his fortress, because nothing says survival like a little retail therapy. Meanwhile, his new friends are still staring out the window, probably in shock, while Jiang is mentally deciding which items will make him the ultimate zombie-slaying machine. Cue the flashback because we needed more drama. We see Jen Kai crying like a baby, blaming someone who used to be his brother. Classic sob story. Turns out, in Jiang's past life, Jiang Kai's entire dorm was wiped out by zombies thanks to one of his so-called brothers. And now, Jiang is on a mission to figure out which of these morons is the backstabber before it all goes south again. As the scene shifts, the witch is back. Our favorite gold-digging manipulative mastermind, Kui Jing. She's lounging in her overpriced apartment, chatting on the phone with some poor soul who probably thinks she's the sweetest woman alive. Little does he know she's got a long history of milking men for their cash and running them into the ground. Her voice drips with faux concern as she asks him when those supplies are coming, claiming she's too scared to go outside because of the chaos in the city. Yeah, because we all know Kui Jing's got a weak stomach for danger. Unless there's money involved, of course. The poor fool on the other end assures her that the supplies will arrive soon. And just when the syrupy exchange can't get more nauseating, there's a loud, frantic bang at her door. Kui Jing screeches in surprise, momentarily breaking her fake princess act. Her phone buddy freaks out, naturally, but Kui Jing tells him to hang tight. She's got to check out who's knocking like a lunatic. Peeking through the peephole, she breathes a sigh of relief. It's her partner in crime, the same woman who was practically drooling over Jiang earlier. Because apparently, a survival situation is the perfect time to flirt. Anyway, Kui Jing lets her in, still shaking from the scare, and instead of asking if she's okay, her friend immediately spills the tea. Apparently, some guy named Old Luo from the first floor was carted off earlier that morning. Kui Jing's response? Shock, of course. Not because she cares about, Old Luo. No. It's because that means things are going south, fast. The friend goes on, explaining how the police and an ambulance showed up, confirming what Kui Jing feared. The chaos downstairs wasn't just random noise, it was a full-blown emergency. And the rabbit flu? Yeah, that rumor's not just an internet hoax anymore. Now, cue the paranoia. Kui Jing starts getting twitchy, asking if Shu King, her other sucker, delivered the goods yet. But of course her friend rolls her eyes, practically laughing at how useless Shu King is. Men, she scoffs, reminding Kui Jing that none of them are worth their weight in gold. Still, she's got a plan. Get in touch with Shu King and let him know that Jiang, the mysterious badass with more survival supplies than a doomsday bunker, is sitting on a gold mine. Her friend's practically salivating at the thought of getting rich off Jiang's stash, claiming that with the amount of stock Jiang's hoarding, he'll be the next Elon Musk of the apocalypse. Kui Jing is furious, though. If Jiang's this prepared, it means one thing. He probably knew about the pandemic before it all went down. While she's still stewing in anger, her friend urges her to seal the deal with Shu King, get him to up their cut of the profits while they still can. Meanwhile, back at Jiang's fortress, yes, the man has a fortress, he and his crew pull up. Jiang Xiaoyong can't hide his awe, gawking like a tourist at Disneyland. Everyone reacts this way, Jing says with a nonchalant shrug. You'd think he just showed them his basement, not a post-apocalyptic stronghold. As they park, out comes Grandpa Lai and Shan to greet them. Grandpa Lai is all smiles, relieved that Jiang is back, while Shan immediately asks if Jiang is okay. Of course, Jiang brushes it off, because what's a little chaos and zombie killing to a guy like him? Jiang introduces his new companions, Jiang Kai and his classmates, and Shan, ever the trusting one, welcomes them with open arms. Because if Jiang picked them, they must be good, right? Grandpa Lie is tasked with showing the newbies around, explaining the rules and regulations. And then we meet Fatso, the guy with glasses who looks like he's one step away from a panic attack. He nervously compares the fortress to northern Myanmar. Charming. Before things can get more awkward, another classmate, Mr. White Jacket, pipes up and boldly asks Jiang to arm them with weapons so they can contribute. Oh, now, this catches Jiang's attention. He's not about to hand over firearms to a bunch of strangers just yet. Luckily, one of White Jacket's classmates, Ying, steps in and tells him to slow his roll. We need to earn Jiang's trust first, he says, showing he's got at least some sense. Jiang reassures them they'll get weapons soon, but first they need to check on Chong, who's still out cold, because apparently being unconscious is his superpower. Inside, while Jiang Kai and his group freshen up, the drama continues. Yining, the classmate with a superiority complex, asks Fatso why he stopped him from demanding weapons earlier. Fatso's confused, thinking they should focus on earning Jiang's trust, but Yining's already scheming. He's suspicious of Jiang and can't shake the feeling that something's off. He wonders aloud about who really hired Jiang and why they haven't been given more answers. And then Yining takes it way too far. He suggests that Jiang might not just be saving them, he could be planning to harvest their organs while they're holed up in the medical room. Yeah, because obviously when someone goes through the trouble of saving your life, it's all part of an elaborate scheme to sell your kidneys. Fatso tries to reason with him, saying that betraying Jiang would be a huge mistake. But Yining? Oh no, this guy's already gone full villain. Better to betray the world than let the world betray you, he sneers, eyes gleaming with twisted ambition. He even goes as far as plotting to take over the fortress, kidnapping Shan and Grandpa Lai when Jiang's out. The audacity! Fatso and Jiang Kai are horrified, but Yining brushes it off with a creepy, "I was just joking." Yeah, sure, because plotting to overthrow your savior is always hilarious. They leave the room, but Yining's already decided. When the time comes, he'll seize control and they'll either follow him or be left behind. Meanwhile, in the warehouse, Grandpa Li and Shan meet up with Jiang. Lai reports that Jiang Kai's group has settled in, and everything's secure. Jiang thanks them, but then he drops a bombshell. He's suspicious that there's a traitor among the new arrivals. Both Shan and her grandfather are visibly shaken by the revelation, and the sense of security within the fortress starts to crumble. Jiang told them to keep an eye on the other remaining classmates of Jiang Kai. Night falls, and Jiang returns to his humble abode. Well, if you can call a fully stocked fortress in the middle of a collapsing world humble. He dives into the system's item shop like a kid in a candy store, redeeming supply boxes one by one. Oh, the goodies. Food, ammo, more food, even more ammo. It's like a doomsday prepper's dream come true. Standing there, admiring his mountain of loot, Jiang casually says, not bad. Sure, it's no Black Friday spree, but in an apocalypse, this is practically the jackpot. The next morning, as the sun shines brightly on the burnt remains of civilization, a convoy of flashy cars and trucks pulls up to Jiang's fortress. Ah yes, nothing says we're here for a friendly chat, like a fleet of armed goons and a guy in a suit who looks like he moonlights as a B-list movie villain. The suited man confirms over the phone that he's at the right address, because of course in a zombie apocalypse, you don't want to accidentally siege the wrong fortress. That would be awkward. Who is this suave menace, you ask? None other than the crazy driver from Jiang's earlier road rage incident. Because apparently holding a grudge in the apocalypse is the new survival skill. His goons, obedient as ever, start banging on Jiang's gate, probably thinking they're about to bust through and impress their boss. But alas, the gate doesn't budge. One of the goons nervously informs the boss that the gate is an inch thick. "Who the hell puts a door this thick in a house?" the driver yells. Maybe someone preparing for lunatics like you? But no worries. These geniuses came prepared with crates full of Molotov cocktails, because when you can't break in, why not just set everything on fire? So, like the total professionals they are, they start tossing fiery bottles over the gate. Flames spread everywhere, because why not throw a pyrotechnic party at the end of the world? Shan, Jiang Kai, and their crew rush out, frantically trying to put out the fires before everything turns to ash. Shan, bless her heart, realizes Jiang was right all along. The apocalypse might not be in full swing yet, but things are already going to hell faster than a bad sequel. Meanwhile, up in the fortress tower, Jiang and Grandpa Li are ready to handle things the old-fashioned way, with guns. From their vantage point, Li recognizes one of the cars. Ah yes, it's that lunatic from the road rage incident. As if on cue, the driver, who is clearly still nursing his grudge, spots Jiang and starts yelling, "Come down here, you little punk, or I'll burn this place to the ground." Ah, the classic villain line. Jiang, ever the calm strategist, casually gives the goons 5 minutes to leave, or, well, else. Predictably, they don't take it well. They start calling him a brat, as if that's going to intimidate a guy standing on top of a fortress armed to the teeth. But hey, they bring out more Molotov cocktails because, when in doubt, throw more fire. Then, as if things weren't fun enough, Jiang gets a little notification from the system. Eliminate these idiots. The system recognizes the goons as a threat, which, let's be honest, wasn't exactly hard to figure out. Grandpa Li, bless his cautious soul, asks if they should fire a warning shot. Jiang, full of dark humor, chuckles at the idea. Warning shots, please. These guys are practically begging to be taken out. As he lines up his shot, Jiang points out the obvious. These guys are already committing arson before society has even fully collapsed. Leave them alive and they'll just kill more people. And with that, he fires. Bam! The driver's arm is blown clean off. He screams like he's never been shot before. What a shocker. And Jiang, ever the perfectionist, grumbles that he missed the shot. Yes, I'm rusty after living the peaceful life for so long. Yeah, because what's an apocalypse without a little target practice? Seeing their boss in pieces, the goons panic and start retreating like the scaredy cats they are. The driver, now missing an arm, tries to rally them to cover him as they sprint for the trucks. But Jiang, oh, he's not done yet. He hates unfinished business. Reloading with the precision of a guy who's been training for this exact moment, he opens fire again, mowing down goons left and right. It's a massacre, and by the time Jiang's done, the front of the fortress is littered with bodies, the trucks smoldering like a bad barbecue gone wrong. Grandpa Li, watching in shock, can't believe what he's seeing. Jiang, this young mysterious guy, is firing guns better than most soldiers. Who the hell is this kid? Li wonders. As the last of the goons scream their final pitiful screams, Jiang stands there, calm as ever. After all, what's a little bloodshed before breakfast? Call Jiang Kai and the others, he tells Li. Tell them to clean this mess up. But then, a brilliant idea pops into Jiang's head. Why waste these perfectly good bodies? He thinks about letting the corpses turn into zombies, for practice. You've got to stay sharp in the apocalypse, after all. He turns to Lai with a twisted grin. We'll let them be. Lai, ever the concerned grandpa figure, asks if they're just going to leave the bodies there. Jiang, still full of dark humor, shrugs. I've got other plans for them. Because why just kill your enemies when you can repurpose them into walking targets for training? Oh, the apocalypse. What a time to be alive. The scene shifts and we see two cars speeding down the road as if they're late for a dinner reservation instead of, surviving. In one car, we've got Shuking, the overconfident mastermind who casually asks if they're almost there, as if he's not planning to rain down hell in a few moments. Seated in the back, Kui Jing and her friend Zia try to keep their cool, but there's clearly some tension brewing. Kui Jing, ever the sharp observer, mentally rolls her eyes, knowing her friend always puts on a show around Shu King. But hey, why cause a scene now? As they reach Jiang's fortress, Shu King decides to park outside, ever the gentleman, and asks Kui Jing to message him once she's inside. Kui Jing steps out with all the grace of someone about to stir up a disaster and tells Zia to tag along. Zia, who clearly didn't get the memo that in an apocalypse complaining is futile, whines about her shoes. Oh, poor Zia, your high heels are killing you. Let's hope that's the only thing killing you today. Ignoring Zia's whining, Kui Jing drags her friend out of the car and tells her to leave her phone behind. After all, who needs communication devices in a death-ridden world, right? Shuking watches them until they're out of sight, then picks up his phone because why not add some plotting to the mix? He gives his thugs the go-ahead to get ready for the upcoming ambush. Standard stuff. Meanwhile, Zia starts pestering Kui Jing with innocent-sounding questions, trying to play the clueless friend. But Kui Jing isn't buying any of it. She knows Zia's here for one reason: Jiang's supplies. Oh, the drama. As they approach the fortress, the girls notice something off. Like, just a casual pile of dead bodies and wrecked cars outside. No biggie, right? Zia, clearly a master of understatement, wonders if there was a shootout or something. Kui Jing, ever the detective, examines the scene, convinced that Jiang might already be dead. But does she care about Jiang? Of course not. She only has eyes for the supplies. And then, like the cherry on top of this disaster sundae, the trunk of a nearby car slowly opens and who pops out? Oh, just the crazy driver from earlier, now slowly mutating into a zombie. What could possibly go wrong? The girls, oblivious to the impending doom behind them, reach the massive gates of the fortress. They're fiddling with the gate, trying to figure out how to break in, when a voice calls out from above. Enter Shan, crossbow in hand, looking like a character straight out of a medieval apocalypse. She demands to know who they are. Zia, ever the smooth talker, tries the "We're friends of Jiang" card, while Kui Jing decides to go for broke and claims to be Jiang's girlfriend. Bold move, Kui Jing, bold move. Shan's not buying it. She calls out to Jiang, referring to them as witches outside his gate. Oh, the sass. Kui Jing, feeling the sting of rejection, starts fuming, convinced that Jiang has a new girlfriend. Shan, of course. Zia tries to calm her down because, they've got bigger problems than a love triangle. Like, say, the mutating zombie lurking in the background. Jiang finally makes an appearance, standing at the top of the tower like a king surveying his kingdom. Except his kingdom is about to be swarmed by zombies. He's clearly not happy to see the girls, calling them out by name and demanding to know what they're doing there. But before they can even stammer out a defense, Jiang activates his Eye of Insight ability. Spoiler, he already knows they're here to betray him. Nice try, girls. And then, like a total savage, Jiang laughs in their faces. Zia, still trying to play innocent, asks if it's a crime to check up on him in these chaotic times. Jiang, unimpressed, asks them how many people they brought and what weapons they have. Panic sets in. The girls, at a loss for words, stand there speechless. Without warning, Jiang fires a shot. A warning shot, sure, but still enough to make the girls question their life choices. Zia tries to keep things calm, but Kui Jing, actually asks if Jiang would dare shoot her dead. Jiang's laugh echoes through the air, dark and cold. Too easy, he says. There are far worse fates than that. And then, right on cue, the sounds of groaning and snarling start up from behind them. The zombie from the trunk has finally decided to make his entrance, and he brought friends. The girls turn, faces pale as they realize what's coming for them. The mutants are closing in fast. In a desperate sprint, the girls dash back towards Shuking's car, screaming his name. But Shuking? Oh no, he's not playing hero today. He sees the zombie horde and promptly decides nope, rolling up his windows and driving off, leaving Kui Jing and Zia to their doom. Kui Jing curses his name as the zombies close in, but it's too late. The tables have turned and things are looking grim. Just when you think it couldn't get worse, Kui Jing makes a truly heartwarming decision. In a move that proves trust no one. In an apocalypse, she tosses her handbag towards Zia's legs, tripping her friend and sending her crashing to the ground. Zia's face meets the road in a painfully undignified fall, and before she can even get up, the zombies are upon her. Oh, poor Zia. All she can do is scream in agony as the creatures pile on her, tearing her apart like she's their last meal. Her vision fades, blood pouring everywhere, and her last thoughts are of rage and betrayal. As she's eaten alive, she curses Kui Jing, swearing she'll never die a good death. But Kui Jing, she doesn't even flinch. Cold sweat drips down her face, and she tells herself that Zia deserved every bit of it. What a lovely friendship. Meanwhile, back in the tower, Jiang and Shan watch the gruesome scene unfold. Shan's horrified, her mind spinning at the horror below. Jiang, he's calm, unfazed, and, frankly, a little bored. The system awards him 10 points for neutralizing the threats, and with that, it gives him a new task. Clear out the remaining zombies. Shan, shaken, turns to Jiang. How could this happen so quickly? She asks, voice trembling. Jiang, ever the cold realist, calmly explains that this is just the beginning. The apocalypse is in full swing, and the air is teeming with infection. Soon the dead will rise, and anyone weak or injured will follow. Shan struggles to process the grim reality. Jiang calls for a meeting. With the same eerie calmness he's had all along, he tells her, this is only the beginning. So there we are inside Jiang's fortress, with everyone crammed into a room. Shan, ever the hostess, locks the door like they're about to enjoy a cozy board game night, instead of discussing how not to mutate into the Walking Dead. The group takes their seats, except Yining, who clearly didn't get the memo about basic social etiquette, and decides to stand in the corner like an angry cat. You can practically feel the tension in the air as they wait for Zhang Ben's grand announcement. Because nothing says calm meeting like a guy whose hobbies include surviving plagues and stockpiling canned goods. Zhang, in all his wisdom, tells them they've got to stay indoors for the next 2 days. No exceptions unless you have a really good reason, like, say, an apocalypse BOGO sale. The real kicker, they have to keep the windows and doors sealed tight because apparently if you let the virus creep in slowly, your body's like, oh, cool, I can deal with this. But if it hits you all at once, well then you're basically going full-on zombie buffet. Lovely. Jiang emphasizes that if they follow his rules, their odds of avoiding a gruesome mutation go up. It's a win-win, unless, of course, you're like Yining, who's already looking like he's planning to rebel by opening every door he can find. Meanwhile, Jiang Kai is freaking out about his friend Chong, who, judging by the worry plastered across his face, is not doing so hot. Later that night, we find poor Chong sprawled out in the infirmary bed, looking like he's in a lot of pain. Half his face is turning purple, like he's auditioning for a part in a really bad superhero movie, except this one ends with him likely being put out of his misery. His veins are bulging out in ways that veins definitely shouldn't, and he's sweating like someone who just realized they didn't clear their browser history. Every second is pure agony. But hey, maybe tomorrow will be better. Or not. Cut to chaos. Outside a skyscraper, there's smoke, screaming, and people in business suits sprinting away like their TPS reports just came to life and started chasing them. Shang, our local window gazer, is having a minor existential crisis while watching the chaos unfold. It's complete madness, he shouts, because apparently he needed to say it out loud in case anyone missed the whole literal apocalypse thing going on outside. Then he suddenly remembers. Oh yeah, supplies. He turns to Zoli and Shouai and instructs them to stay inside and not open the door for anyone, except him, of course. You know, classic stay safe while I go be a hero move. He's all business, prepping to head to the warehouse, while the woman clutches the child like they're in the world's worst horror movie. Then, of course, someone knocks on the door. Shang freezes, and you can almost hear his internal monologue. Great. This better be Amazon. He signals for everyone to keep quiet, which is the universal sign for this is about to go sideways. He cautiously opens the door, gripping a golf club like he's about to tee off on some zombie skulls. A voice calls out, "Brother X, are you home?" Relief washes over Shang's face. It's just Yong Tao, his good buddy. Crisis averted, right? Shang relaxes, drops the golf club, and opens the door fully. Big mistake, bam! Yong Tao kicks him straight in the chest, and down goes Shang, crashing to the floor like he just lost a fight with a treadmill. He's wheezing, clutching his ribs, and can barely get out a, "What the hell, man?" before the rest of Yong Tao's crew rushes in, pinning him to the ground like this is some kind of apocalyptic frat hazing. And just like that, the betrayal sinks in. Shang, now looking up at Yong Tao with a mix of shock and heartbreak, gasps, "I treated you so well, what are you doing?" Cue the villain monologue. Yong Tao, smirking like a guy who just got a free upgrade on his pizza order, sneers, "Treated me well? In your eyes, I was just a lackey." Shang sputters out something about helping Yong Tao with a house down payment, and in true bitter sidekick fashion, Yong Tao throws it back in his face. "Yeah, you helped me with the down payment," he admits, "but you've earned enough for several houses. Now, how about you hand over those warehouse keys?" While Shang's still writhing on the ground, Yong Tao grabs the woman by her hair, yanking her to face him as he taunts Shang. "Look here, you bastard!" The child, wide-eyed with terror, does the only logical thing. He bites Yong Tao's arm like he's been practicing on action figures for this very moment. Yong Tao reacts with all the grace of a playground bully, shouting, "You little brat," as he shoves the kid aside. Poor kid stumbles, hitting the floor with a cry, while the woman watches in horror, tears streaming down her face. Shang, still pinned to the ground, musters every ounce of energy he has left. "You bastard," he snarls, glaring at Yong Tao. "If you've got any guts, come at me. Leave my wife and child out of this." But Yong Tao, now fully enjoying his moment in the spotlight, just chuckles. "Don't worry. As long as you cooperate, your wife and child will be safe." Yeah, because trusting the guy who just kicked you in the chest is a great idea. Shang, however, doesn't have much choice. And so, with a defeated sigh, he leads Yong Tao and his goons to the warehouse, all while seething with a mix of rage and helplessness. Yong Tao and his merry band of thugs stride confidently into the room, silhouetted by the light outside like they just stepped off a movie poster for Apocalypse Now, the low-budget edition. They strike a pose, because of course they do, with Yong at the center, surveying the place like he's about to order some overpriced real estate. Yong, always the skeptic, glances at the remaining supplies and throws out a line that might as well be from a bad TV infomercial. This is all that's left. Cue Shang, who's standing beside him, facing away, probably wishing he could be anywhere else. Shang responds defensively. Weren't you the one who found those big clients? Everything's been sold off, even the expired stuff, because nothing screams desperation quite like hawking expired cans of beans during the end of days. Yong, ever the deep thinker, touches his chin in that I'm definitely smarter than you, Wei, while Shang's just there, trying not to lose it. Shang, doing his best to maintain some shred of dignity, stares at Yong in disbelief. What do you mean? He asks, because apparently the apocalypse also brings with it a serious lack of clarity. Yong, being the charmer he is, offers a deal that sounds straight out of a shady car dealership. Take Jiang Zhang's supplies, and in return your wife and child will be safe. Fair trade, don't you think? Yeah, because nothing says fair like dangling your family's lives over your head while holding all the cards. Shang's face contorts in a mixture of rage, frustration, and the kind of silent internal screaming that accompanies realizing you've hit rock bottom. Cut to Jiang Fortress, a massive industrial complex that looks like someone thought Mad Max was a blueprint for good architecture. Inside, the tension's thick enough to cut with a butter knife. Jiang and his crew face off against an unseen threat, all wearing expressions that range from, "We've got this," to "What the hell did we just get into?" In the foreground, one of Jiang's friends is strapped to a chair, veins bulging like a stress ball that's about to burst. He's yelling his head off somewhere between agony and rage, because being on the verge of turning into a mutant tends to bring out the best in people. Fatso. Yes, that's what they call him because subtlety clearly isn't a thing here, is standing nearby, looking about as tense as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Tears are running down his face, and the noise is obviously getting to him, because nothing ruins your day quite like watching your buddy go full zombie. Jiang's other friend is not having it. "Kill him," he says, his face slick with sweat, eyes steely. It's the kind of line you drop when you're making the decision to either save everyone or end up on the wrong end of a really bad horror movie. Jiang, with his usual stoic expression, glances off to the side while Fatso protests. "He's our brother. You're giving up on him without even trying." Fatso's passionate, but let's be real. They've all seen this before. Jiang's reply, cold and pragmatic. He's right. Once someone turns, there's almost no chance of recovery. Translation: your friend is halfway to being a brain-eating monster, so maybe it's time to cut your losses. Then, in a moment straight out of a Western showdown, Jiang calmly pulls a knife from its sheath and hands it over to a nearby guy who looks like he just realized he's about to be the star of a very unfortunate reality show. "Use this," Jiang commands with the same tone someone might use when asking you to pass the salt. The poor guy stares at the knife like it's a live grenade, wide-eyed and stammering. "What do you mean?" Jiang doesn't even blink. "Finish him off," he says, cool as a cucumber. The guy, sweating bullets and probably regretting every life choice that led him here, hesitates because who wouldn't? There's a literal knife in his hand, and he's supposed to use it on his friend, who's thrashing in the chair, probably moments away from turning into the Hulk's uglier cousin. "You've always wanted a weapon, haven't you?" Jiang says, pushing the knife closer like he's offering a gift. "Now take this weapon and put him out of his misery." You can practically see the guy's soul leaving his body as he sweats through his shirt. It's the kind of moment where you realize the apocalypse doesn't just bring out the worst in humanity, it forces you to make the worst decisions too. Finally, in a dramatic gesture that would make Shakespeare proud, Yang Kai steps forward, gripping the knife tightly. "I'll do it," he says, eyes burning with a mix of determination and horror. The drama is so thick you could cut it with the knife Jiang Kai is currently holding, though he looks like he'd rather be anywhere else, maybe lounging on a beach sipping piña coladas. His face is practically dripping with anxiety, sweat rolling down like he's just finished a marathon. And in a way, he has. A marathon of self-doubt, that is. Jiang, ever the puppet master, hands him the knife with the same casual vibe as if he's passing the salt at a dinner party. But of course, this isn't just a simple handoff. Jiang, with that smug, "I'm 3 steps ahead of everyone" attitude, turns the tension up to 11. He locks eyes with Jiang Kai and throws out a warning as if it's nothing more than a suggestion. "Are you sure you've thought this through? You know, this might just make you a murderer." You can almost hear Jiang Kai's internal monologue screaming, "Wait, what?" But outwardly he tries to hold it together, forcing some determination into his voice as he declares his trust in brother Jiang. Oh, bless him. He's still under the impression that Jiang cares about trust. His friend, standing in the background, looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. His face is a mix of, "Oh God, this is going horribly wrong," and "Do I need to start writing my will?" And there's Jiang, cool as a cucumber, tossing out a casual "oh," like he's mildly interested in what's on TV while chaos brews all around him. But then, the real fun starts. Lying in a hospital bed is a man who clearly missed the relaxing day at the spa memo, and instead signed up for the about-to-be-stabbed experience. He's writhing in pain, distress plastered all over his face. And here comes Jiang Kai standing over him, holding that knife like it's a sacred relic. Except instead of holy enlightenment, it's about to bring a world of hurt. The poor guy on the bed is panicking, screaming, sweating. He's the human embodiment of pure terror. Jiang Kai's face, meanwhile, is all fierce determination, teeth clenched like he's auditioning for a most angsty face competition. He lifts the knife high above his head, channeling all his rage, ready to bring it down like he's starring in a low-budget slasher flick. Cue the slow-motion terror from the man on the bed. His eyes widen, his mouth opens in a scream, and the knife inches closer, closer, until it stops, just inches from his terrified face. Plot twist. Enter Jiang, calm as ever, gripping Jiang Kai's wrist like he's stopping a toddler from spilling juice. Jiang Kai's struggling, but Jiang, he's zen. He's the eye of the storm, holding back the chaos with a mere flick of his wrist. The guy on the bed, still shaking in fear, lets out a breath of relief. The attack is over for now. Jiang Kai, now back in "what do I do now" mode, nervously turns to Jiang, probably hoping for a pat on the back, or at least a reassuring nod. But Jiang? Nah, he's not done playing chess while everyone else is still learning how the pieces move. He dismisses the others with a wave, indicating he's got bigger plans, special plans for someone unique. And just when you think things couldn't get any weirder, the system chimes in with an alert. Rare variant discovered. Oh great, just what they needed, a zombie with extra flair. As if on cue, a loud bang echoes through the hallway. The doors to the medical room slam shut, trapping them inside in the real nightmare. Now we're in the heart of the action, and Jiang stands over Chen Chong, who is no longer a man. He's a rabid, zombified ball of fury strapped to a bed. He's growling, snarling, teeth bared, every inch of him screaming defiance. But Jiang, oh, he's just leaning in closer, his face as calm as ever, addressing Chen Chong by name like they're having a nice chat over coffee. He asserts his authority, letting the zombified man know that despite all the snarling and rage, he's still the one calling the shots. Chen Chong's face is a mix of pain, rage, and something that looks suspiciously like, why is this happening to me? Jiang, ever the composed villain, doesn't care. He assigns Chen Chong some important task, as if that's what you do with zombies, delegate responsibilities. Because why not? As Jiang finishes, you can almost hear the audience sighing in disbelief. The scene opens with the unmistakable screech of a sleek black car pulling an insane turn on a rooftop. Because of course, where else would you do high-speed car chases but on a rooftop? This isn't just any escape maneuver. This is a Fast and Furious meets Resident Evil level of chaos. The car crashes into a pole with a deafening impact, leaving skid marks and a clear message. Things are not going as planned. Enter Shang, emerging from the wreck like he just crawled out of a blender, rubbing his head and cursing his luck. His face is pure exasperation, as if the universe woke up and decided, yeah, let's make Shang's day even worse. Smoke billows from the vehicle, the severity of the situation now painfully clear. And just as the universe finishes laughing at Shang's optimism, a zombie shows up. Not just any zombie, mind you. This one's got all the ferocity of a dog that hasn't eaten in a week and just spotted a steak. The thing roars, lunging at him like it's auditioning for a horror flick. Shang's immediate reaction? Panic. Total unfiltered panic. He's scrambling, flailing, managing to push the creature away, with all the grace of a man who's never done cardio in his life. The zombie hits the ground with a thud, but Shang knows better than to celebrate just yet. He sprints back to his car, what's left of it anyway, like a man possessed, the zombie hot on his heels. Desperation in his eyes, he reaches into the car and grabs a metal rod. Because clearly, when you're fighting the undead, the best weapon isn't a gun or a sword or even a flamethrower. Shang swings the rod at the zombie. He connects with a brutal thunk, venting every ounce of frustration into that one hit. The zombie hits the dirt hard, but Shang is left panting, leaning on his makeshift weapon like it's his last lifeline. Smoke pours from his wrecked car behind him. Cut to Jiang, who steps onto a rooftop with the swagger of a man who's done this 1,000 times. The squeaky door ruins the moment, but he's not fazed. His team follows closely behind, each of them armed and ready like they're about to storm a fortress. But instead, they're here for zombies. Shan, already annoyed by the bulky gear she's wearing, questions Jiang's judgment. Is all this really necessary? She whines, as if zombies are a mild inconvenience rather than a real danger. Jiang, ever the composed leader, calmly explains that when you're dealing with creatures that can tear your face off, maybe a little extra protection isn't the worst idea. As the team huddles behind a building, strategizing their next move, Jiang emphasizes the importance of staying alert. You know, just in case the undead get any funny ideas. They're now well within zombie perception range, and the tension rises. Just as predicted, a zombie detects their presence, its vicious snarl enough to raise the stakes. Jiang's voice cuts through the chaos, instructing his team to keep their distance and watch out for each other. It's like a horror movie pep talk, except they're the ones in the film. Suddenly, a zombie makes a wild lunge at Jiang, but he dodges with ease. Cool as ever, he shouts instructions to the team. Hit the temple or the back of the neck, otherwise you're just playing patty cake with the undead. One brave soul steps up, fueled by Jiang's guidance, and swings at the zombie's head. Big mistake. The poor guy picked the hardest part of the skull and is now learning a very painful lesson. The zombie roars back, furious, and shoves the attacker like it's just gotten its second wind. In a desperate plea for help, the team member calls out to Jiang Kai. Jiang, still in command, orders Jiang to step in. With precise timings, Jiang swings a bat and whack. Jiang smirks. He's not worried. In fact, he's barely paying attention to the zombie charging at him. But as Jiang Kai yells out in alarm, warning Jiang about the advancing threat, the zombie lunges, snarling, teeth bared, ready to tear into him. Without breaking a sweat, Jiang catches the zombie by the head with one hand. Yeah, just like that. He stops the attack with a grip so firm it's almost laughable. With the zombie thrashing in his grasp, Jiang gives it a calm, almost fatherly admonishment. Always be aware of your surroundings, he chides, as if the creature is capable of absorbing life lessons. He turns the tables effortlessly, leaving the rest of the team staring in stunned silence. If they weren't impressed before, they certainly are now. Meanwhile, Shang, still reeling from his earlier ordeal, is scanning his surroundings, growing more frustrated by the minute. He's noticed vagrants nearby and wonders, not for the first time, if Jiang would have bothered to clue him in on any of this. Then a shadowy figure with glowing eyes emerges from under the vehicle. Zia, desperately crawling despite her severe injuries. She reaches out, grasping onto a random bystander's leg like it's her lifeline. The poor guy stumbles back, his face contorting in horror as the reality of the situation sinks in. But before anyone can react, Zia lets out an unearthly roar, her eyes wide with fury. She lunges, embodying every nightmare they've ever had, catching the man completely off guard. Just as he was about to kiss his miserable life goodbye, a gunshot echoed, and Zia's decaying head exploded like a rotten melon. Some stranger had taken pity on him. Turns out it wasn't just any stranger. It was Jiang. Of course it was Jiang. Who else but the hero of this apocalyptic circus? Zia's corpse, headless in more ways than one, slumped to the ground. Shang threw her away in disgust, half wishing he could throw away his guilt that easily. Jiang was surprised to see Shang still alive, which wasn't exactly a compliment. "What the hell are you doing here?" Jiang asked, the amusement in his voice unmistakable. Shang, ever the actor, slapped on his best fake smile, the one he'd used on every so-called friend before they realized what a snake he was. "Oh, hey, Jiang, man, I thought you were dead," he said, with all the sincerity of a used car salesman. Inside, he was screaming, but he figured a smile would do for now. But Jiang wasn't buying it. The second Shang got a little too close, Jiang raised his rifle, pointing it directly at a bite mark on Shang's arm. Ah, there it was. Shang's death warrant etched in his skin. He hadn't even noticed, what with all the adrenaline and denial flowing through his veins. "Don't come any closer," Jiang warned, his voice calm but firm. Shang froze. Reality hit him like a truckload of regrets. It was all over for him. He was a dead man walking, or rather, soon to be limping. But still, there was one thing he couldn't give up: his family. Wait, Shang stammered, holding his hands up like some common criminal begging for a last cigarette. "Just hear me out. My family, my wife, my kid, they're in trouble. That bastard Yang Tao kidnapped them." His voice cracked, his fear palpable. "He's using them to blackmail me. He wants me to get into your base, steal your supplies, but I can't do that. I might be a scumbag, but I'm not that much of a scumbag." Jiang listened, his rifle still trained on Shang, but now there was a flicker of curiosity behind his stoic gaze. Shang kept talking, desperation pouring out of him. "Please, man, just save them. Do whatever you want to me, but don't let those monsters hurt them. You don't understand what Yang Tao will do. They'll be worse off than I am. Worse than a zombie." Jiang mulled it over. On one hand, Shang was a selfish opportunist who had never done anything that didn't benefit himself. On the other hand, well, Shang did help stockpile supplies. Begrudgingly, Jiang had to admit that Shang had saved him some headaches back in the day. It was ironic that now, of all times, the tables had turned. As fate, or rather the system, would have it, a notification popped up in Jiang's mind. New mission: entrust the wife and child. It was almost laughable. Of course, saving Shang's family was worth points. More points, in fact, than even the latest zombie cleanup mission near the fortress. How convenient. With an inward sigh, Jiang agreed to take care of Shang's family. When Jiang gave him the nod, Shang just crumbled. The guy actually cried. "Thank you," he sobbed, bowing like a medieval servant pledging his eternal loyalty. "I swear in the next life I'll serve you. I'll be your slave, your dog. Anything you want." It was embarrassing, really. Jiang almost felt bad for the poor idiot. Almost. Then came Shang's final request, and Jiang saw it coming a mile away. "Please," Shang begged. "I don't want to turn into one of those things. Just End it now." Jiang raised an eyebrow, pretending not to understand. "What? End what?" "Me," Shang said, exasperated. "I don't want to become one of them. Just do it. Kill me." But Jiang, ever the pragmatist, wasn't in any hurry. He'd seen enough apocalyptic movies to know how this played out. Instead of granting Shang his wish, Jiang smirked. "Tell you what, there's a bike in the warehouse. Go get it, then ride as far away from here as possible, find somewhere isolated, and wait it out." Shang blinked, completely baffled. "Wait, what?" Shang didn't get it, but what choice did he have? So, like the obedient dog he had become, Shang nodded, muttering his eternal gratitude. Shang pedaled like a madman, legs burning, heart racing, sweat dripping down his brow. Every second counted now. The virus was digging deeper, clawing through his veins with every turn of the pedals. But the thought of his wife and son kept him pushing forward, even as his body began to betray him. He didn't have time to wonder how ridiculous he must look. A half-infected man on a rusty bicycle, barreling through a zombie wasteland. The world had already gone mad. What was one more lunatic on two wheels? Meanwhile, back at the base, Jiang and his team had finished their gruesome cleanup. They'd gathered the zombies into a nice little pile, doused them in fuel, and set them ablaze. Watching the horde burn, Jiang couldn't help but smirk. Well, at least they won't be coming back for an encore performance. It was a hard day, but they were getting better at this. Hell, his team was so experienced now they could take down a lone zombie with just a stick and some guts. If only hordes were as easy as that. Still, Jiang knew they weren't ready to face the larger packs yet. Not unless they wanted to become the next zombie barbecue. "Let's head back to the fortress before something else decides we look tasty," he advised, already moving toward the armored gates of the warehouse. Jiang handed him the keys to the weapons warehouse, laying out the gravity of the situation. "Grandpa Lai, you're in charge. Keep the fort safe while I'm gone." Grandpa Lai, always up for a challenge, accepted the task with a firm nod, but there was something in his eyes that said, "What are you planning, Jiang?" "Going into the city at night, alone. You sure you haven't lost your mind?" Jiang just grinned, brushing off the concern. "Relax. You know I'm good at this. Besides, someone's got to deal with that mess Shang left behind. His wife and kid are in danger. His old friends, never ones to let a fight go by without them, immediately wanted to tag along." Yiming, however, wasn't too thrilled at the idea. Jiang raised a hand to stop their enthusiasm. "You guys aren't ready for this, not yet. You just slow me down. The best thing you can do is keep this fortress safe. That's a bigger job than you think." He didn't wait for them to argue, already moving toward the car, loading it up with every melee and ranged weapon he could find. He had one mission tonight: save Shang's family, even if the coward didn't deserve it. But before he could leave, he checked the system store. Empty. Damn thing was slower than the zombies themselves. Frustrated, Jiang decided to manually update the store, knowing full well the price was going to bite him in the ass. Sure enough, the cost had jumped to 4 points just for a simple refresh. Great. But when the new supplies appeared, his irritation eased a little. There were 3 new boxes: Black Tech, Life-Saving, and Armed Deterrent. Naturally, the Black Tech box was the most expensive, because why make anything easy? Still, he had just enough points to snag it. When Jiang opened the box, a blinding light filled the car. He cursed under his breath, blinded like he'd just walked into the world's most obnoxious flashbang. But the momentary rage melted away when he saw what he'd won: a physical enhancement serum. 5 bonus points to his strength, all in one go. He wasted no time using it, gritting his teeth through the painful surge that followed. But when it was over, his strength had jumped to 13 points, making him about 2.6 times stronger than your average Joe. Not bad. Not bad at all. But while Jiang was gearing up, things weren't going so well at Shang's home. His wife was doing her best to comfort their son, whispering reassurances that Daddy would take care of everything. She wasn't convinced, but in this world, hope was all you had to cling to. Meanwhile, the thugs under Yang Tao's command were getting impatient. Their leader had run out of patience altogether. Yang Tao kicked in the door like the villain in some B-grade horror movie. His twisted grin said everything Shang's wife feared. "What are you going to do?" she asked, voice trembling with terror. But of course, the answer was obvious. Yang Tao wasn't exactly known for his subtlety. He'd been waiting to have fun for a while now. They started tearing her clothes, and the apocalypse only meant no one would hear her screams, or worse, no one would care. And that's it for today. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. See you in the next adventure.